Um, I welcome everybody who's here today. Thank you for giving up your Saturday morning. And um, I know you have other things you could be doing on a Saturday morning. So thank you so much for being here. Um, I'm assuming most of you are within 5 years of retirement. And I know if we had the screens on, y'all would be grinning from ear to ear because to go through and to be able to count on one hand the number of years, and some of you might even be counting the number of days and weeks. It's really an exciting time to go through and think about your future. So to that end, I'm going to put a link in the chat. We have a great program planned on the pre-retirement seminar, and we have several speakers that who will be with us today. And I'm going to share the agenda so you can see the topics we'll be talking about. We'll go through and talk about legal matters in just a moment because having all your aging paperwork in place is a really important item as you get ready to retire. And then Lisa Underwood, who's a GAE retired member, will go through and just give us the basics of TRS. I know that we have just come through a general election and we have new people who will be in place in our General Assembly. And because it's the first year of a biennial session, I've heard through the grapevine that TRS may be on the let's take a look at what's currently in place chopping block. So I think it's really important that we all know a little bit about what TRS is. So this is just an overview. And then we have our Social Security Public Affairs Specialist, Anise Norman, who is wonderful. We'll talk to you about Social Security. And then Tony Smith, our GAE retired president, will talk about how you may not get Social Security. She's just the messenger, and we'll explore that topic. And then as we wind up the morning, because I know some of you are going, we're going to be here for 4 hours. You've got to be kidding me. We have our speaker from TRS, Mike Zorum, and then I'll have some closing announcements at the very end. And the good thing about this program is that if you're going through and thinking, I'm not going to remember all of this, I'm going to get a ton of information. And it's like, I don't know, I don't remember what they said. And this is important stuff. In the next week or so, hopefully before Thanksgiving, I will go through and send you a link to the recording of this program, along with copies of the PowerPoints and any other handouts. So you will have a chance over Thanksgiving break to go through and to review everything and to look at certain segments again. So without further ado, we're going to go through and I have Robin Lacrimosa will go through and talk to us about our aging documents. So Robin, give me just a second here to share, and thank you so much for being with us this morning. And
there we go.
There we go. And let me go from the beginning. And you can just tell me to change slide, and miraculously, I hope I will.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Robin. I work in an elder law firm. I'm a little bit different in that I am actually a social worker. Our firm's a little bit different, and we do legal and financial care, but we also have a care aspect, which is where I come in. And to be totally honest, my son and I have been fighting a really bad cold. So I hope y'all bear with me. And I have to tell y'all, hats off to all of you teachers who work in the classroom, because kids are grubby, dirty, germy little things. And my son brought this delight home from school. So hats off to all y'all for doing that. So I'm gonna just kind of go through some of these. This is kind of really your basic legal documents that you need as you age, especially, but really everyone should have some of these things in place. So if you'll go to the next slide.
Well,
I'm going to figure out how to do this myself one of these days. So the three important things everyone should have in place is a last will, a testament, a financial power of attorney, which is also called the durable power of attorney, and an advance directive for healthcare, which used to be called a living will. So some of those things, it's also called healthcare power of attorney because, you know, apparently legal, we like to have lots of different names to confuse things for people. So we're going to talk about why these three documents are all really important to have in place. So if we'll go to the next slide.
and Robin, if I can say one thing, you may, as a participants may have individual questions.
Mhm.
And what I hope will happen is along with the handout you'll get concerning all the recording for this and all the PowerPoint slides, I will have contact information for each of the speakers. So because everyone's situation is probably a little different, unless it's a generic question, I'll invite you to email and be in contact with the speakers to get your questions answered, if that's okay.
Yeah. And one thing I always forget is I am always happy to answer questions. And then we do, if you decided to want to come in and have some legal work done, we do waive our consultation fee if you saw me here. So just mention that. But if you just have a question, you're always welcome to email me or call me and I'll try to point you in the right direction. So what happens if you do not have a last will and testament? Here in Georgia, not everything goes to your spouse as you would think maybe it would. So this is basically how things happen. If you die without a will, Georgia determines how your assets are going to be divided up, and a third of it will go to your spouse, and then 2/3 of it gets split among any children that you may have. And the reason it's important to have a will is because if you don't, you may have a child that you're estranged from. You may have a child who is just not at a point in their life where they need to inherit a large sum of money. That's just not a good option for them at that point. You may have your niece or have remarried and have a child that you really want to leave things to that maybe you're closer to than your biological children. And if you die without a will, this is on the screen is basically how it happens, regardless if you have this niece that you've raised from the time she was a baby, and that's who you would want to get your assets. And then of course, families are complicated. So if you have a will and testament, it's really kind of an indisputable document. So the families sometimes don't like what the will says, but it's pretty much all written in stone and everything is to be followed according to whatever your will stated. So that is why a will is important. If we'll go to the next slide. This kind of talks about more about what happens if you do not have a will. They have to petition the probate court. Now, even if you have a will, you do have to petition the probate court. You have whoever is named your executor of the will is going to be the one who does that, but it's a lot more complicated and more expensive if you do not have a will. If you have a will and you've named, your son as your executor, he just has to take that document to the probate court. It's pretty straightforward. If you don't have a will, they have to advertise everything. Things have to be posted in the newspaper. It takes a lot longer to get all of the things worked out. The court has to, do an order to sell anything. And as I mentioned before, unintended consequences, the children that may be left out. So the other thing to remember is when you start to get the court involved in having to make these decisions, it gets more expensive. And it's really just less convenient. Next slide. So if you have a will and testament in place, everything goes to the right people at the right place, the right time. It's a very simple probate. They don't have to, other than basically going to the probate court and showing their will and filing that as the executor, then they are able to go and follow out your wishes of the will. Next slide. So the financial power of attorney, also called the durable power of attorney, why is this important? So this is only if you are incapacitated, if you have had some kind of catastrophic event and you cannot speak for yourself. This is the only time that whoever you have named your agent is able to step in and manage your money. So if you were to have a catastrophic event and your family needed to sell your home or move money around to pay your bills, pay for your care, they want to take care of you at home, they need to have access to your money to pay for that care, they cannot do it without a financial power of attorney. I will say one thing that I know from working at the law firm is there is a state statute, which is about 11 pages, that gives the banks have to accept that. Our financial power of attorney that our attorneys draw up has that 11-page statute and then another 20 pages, which gives you much more rights. The state statute, sometimes people will run into issues where they can't access somebody's IRAs. It gets complicated as far as the banking and the IRAs and some of those things. So that's why a financial power of attorney is really important. If you don't have one and you have this event and you are now incompetent, your family has to go to courts. Remember, again, courts equal money. They have to apply for guardianship and conservatorship. So they have to go to the probate court. They have to hire an attorney to do guardianship. You can't usually get it to go through on your own. The judges usually want a lawyer involved. And then whatever family takes over your guardianship and conservatorship now has to report to the court every year. They have to basically do a financial filing showing how they are managing your money. They're not misusing any of your funds, all of those kind of things. The other piece of it is that they have to get bonded. So if you have a child who maybe has had some legal issues, financial bad decisions, has poor credit, they may not be able to be your conservatorship because they have to be able to be bonded. And being bonded basically means an insurance company says, okay, you're worth $200,000. We're going to bond your son for $200,000. That way, if something happens and he misuses your money, the insurance company covers that. That is a court requirement, and it can be quite expensive. And again, just like if you did not have a will, if they want to sell your house, they want to move monies around, different things like that, they have to go through the court to make any of those things happen. Next slide. So I'm going ahead of myself here, but so if you have a financial power of attorney, all of what I just said about guardianship, conservatorship, that is all null and void. If you have so between working in the law office, I've worked in the emergency room for 14 years as a social worker. So I've seen a lot of family situations. If you have a financial power of attorney, essentially you have assigned one person who is going to be in charge of your money. And it doesn't really matter what your other children maybe feel about that. This is a legal binding document, and that person is going to make the best decisions, because we all know we have some family members who we would allow to manage our money, and we have some family members we don't even want to know how much money we have because we just have very different views of finances. So having a financial power of attorney in place, hopefully you won't need it, but is super important to avoid all of the court getting involved. And then if you have families, if you have children who are fighting over access to your financial documents, that gets it even more complicated because then it's a contested guardianship. So you can avoid all of that by having a financial power of attorney in place. Next slide. So advanced directive for healthcare. Like I said, it used to be the living will. It's also called healthcare power of attorney. This document is fairly straightforward. We do them at the law office. You can also get them online. You can do them at the hospital. They do not have to be notarized and witnessed. The financial power of attorney does. This one is something you can certainly do on your own. I really highly recommend that you do it and have it taken to your local hospital, to your doctor's offices. Again, this is just if you have some kind of catastrophic event and cannot speak for yourself. So in this document, you go through and you say what your wishes are. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to have an autopsy? Do you want to have a feeding tube? All of those kind of things, you basically get to share what your wishes are. And then you name someone or several someones as your agent. So if you cannot speak for yourself, then they step in and share what your wishes are. Again, 14 years in the ER, I am a huge believer in this. I think this is the greatest gift that you can give your children, because imagine you've had a massive stroke and they don't know if you're going to survive. Your family has enough to deal with that unexpected event without having then to decide, what did mom want? What, you know, what does she want us to do? And then again, add in that there's family dynamics that go into that. You may have one child who's like, do everything no matter what. And you may have another child who is like, you know, wouldn't want to live this way. So this is a really important document. And again, this one you don't even need an attorney for. It's pretty straightforward. So you can do that whenever you wanted to. Next slide. Okay, one of the things we talk about is asset protection. This gets kind of complicated, but basically, so here in Georgia, if you were to have a catastrophic event and need nursing home care, the way, in order to qualify for Medicaid, you have to basically spend down all of your money. If you are a single person in Georgia and you have a stroke and you need to go live in a nursing home, you can only have $2,000, period. So if you have worked all your life and saved money and made good decisions and invested in a house and savings like they told us to do, if you don't pre-plan, sometimes basically you will have to spend all of that money before state benefits will kick in. So what we call is asset protection. There are ways that you can, basically, a lot of times it's to put it in an irrevocable trust. Essentially, if you, and we see this sometimes with people who have a diagnosis. So I deal with a lot of clients who have a cognitive impairment diagnosis. And they will sometimes come in and set things into a trust because they know that more than likely, inevitably, they're going to need some kind of long-term care. So we can move their assets into a trust, name a trustee, then these assets are no longer in their names. And so Georgia does a 5-year look back for gifts, which basically means you would, if you knew you had a diagnosis that was concerning, you could do this asset protection. And then after 5 years, you would be eligible to qualify for state benefits if you needed long-term care without having to spend down all of your money. The house, if you have a primary residence, that doesn't count against you to qualify for Medicaid benefits. But what people don't know is the state does what we call a state recovery. So essentially the state says you can live in, you know, you can own your house. So I have a lot of families who maybe the children live in that house and the parent wants to leave that house to their children. Well, if they need nursing home care, then when that person passes away, the state can put a lien on your house. And basically it's a way, if you think of it, is the state said, okay, we paid $120,000 for your care. You have this house that's worth $200,000. We want our $120,000 back. Now they don't always, but they always have the right to do that. So this is another reason why asset protection can be important. Karen, do you mind going to the next slide? But then actually, I think my slides are out of order. So we're going to actually skip that one and go to the next one. I got to fix this. Okay, so this is still about asset protection, and then we'll go back to the other slide. You can't just transfer everything to your children. That is considered a gift. So the state has figured out they don't want us to be able to go, oh, I just got this diagnosis, I'm going to give everything to my kids, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, I'm going to apply for state benefits. It doesn't work that way. And then there's other complications. There's potential capital gains, you know, tax issues. Giving all of your money to your children may put them in a different tax bracket. You may have children that, like I said earlier, just cannot inherit a large amount of money. That's just, they're just not in that place in their life. That's still your money, even when it's in a trust. So you're going to have someone who you trust to manage that money for you. It's still your money. It's going to be used for your care. And then there's always the issue about liability. If your child has an accident and they've inherited all your money and you're still alive, they could be sued for that. That's a trust protects you from that liability. If they get divorced, and you've suddenly given them, you know, $100,000 to help you qualify down the road for Medicaid, then their spouse may be eligible for part of that money. So there's lots of different ways to kind of pre-plan for this, and it's important to be thinking about it before you need it. There are things we can do. We do have clients who come in and they don't have the 5 years to do the look back. And there are things that we can do to try to save some of their assets. But this is really important, to plan ahead. Do you mind going back one slide? We'll go back to, okay, so Medicare. A lot of people are confused about what Medicare pays for. Medicare was designed long ago, before people were living as long as they are, to basically help you get better and back into the workforce. That's kind of how Medicare was designed. Medicare does not pay for long-term care. Now, Medicare will pay for rehab for up to 100 days, as long as you're still showing improvements. So if you have broken a hip and are getting rehab and getting therapy, as long as you're improving, you can do that. But Medicare is not going to pay for long-term care. Now people are living longer with illnesses like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. That was not expected. So Medicare is a great option for short-term care. Just remember that is really all it's going to do is short-term care. It's a rehab. I always say Medicare is kind of like a Band-Aid, and hopefully your wound will heal under that Band-Aid and you'll be fine. But if it doesn't, Medicare is not going to be the lifeline that some people think it is. So let's go forward. We're going to, excuse me. All right, skip that one. There you go. The VA pension. So if we have any veterans, this is something we are very passionate about at our firm. Any veterans who served during wartime, I think you can go to the next slide, are eligible for a pension. It is not disability. It is not a handout. I get that sometimes from the veterans. It is because they served during wartime when we needed them. Unfortunately, the VA does not really share any information about this account. And I'm a little cynical, but the VA is also deny till you die. But there is this pension. Go to the next slide, please. And like it says, it's been around since 1960. It is for veterans who have served during these war times. There are some specific dates of service, and anyone is welcome to call me or email me. I get a lot sometimes, family members. Sometimes it's not even like the person who's calling. It's like, my brother-in-law's wife was a veteran. There's also a surviving spouse benefit. So even if the veteran themselves have passed away, as long as they were still legally married when the veteran passed away, there is a surviving spouse benefit. Next slide. So there are 3 parts that go into qualifying for this veteran benefit. Age and health status. They must be at least 65 years old or disabled. Now, interestingly enough, the VA basically says when you are 65 and older, you are disabled as far as they're concerned. So I think that's crazy, but that's how they determine it. The surviving spouse can be any age. So they have the 3 things that we look at to qualify for this pension is dates of service. And we usually need the person's, what we call their DD-214. It's their military discharge papers. So we can check and make sure that they are indeed eligible. They cannot have been dishonorably discharged. They only really have to have served 1 active duty day in a 90-day period of the wartime. So even if somebody went in the service, 3 months before the Vietnam War ended, they would still be eligible. They have to need some assistance with activities of daily living. It's a very low bar. It could be they have grab bars in their shower, they use a cane. One of my veterans is very alert and oriented and able-bodied, but he has Parkinson's. And so he needs some assisted devices, really just because he can't open things, he can't do his buttons, some of those kind of things. So it's a very low standard for what they might qualify for as far as activities of daily living. Next slide. Financial. So there is a financial income. Basically, the standard for the VA is that you have to have $137,000 or less in assets, not including your home. However, If you have more than that, it can be offset if you have medical expenses. Sometimes we do caregiver agreements, which basically is kind of a loophole that we use to have people qualify. If you move into an assisted living community, some of those different things. We also sometimes have folks that we know are over income, but the VA does a 3-year look back. So kind of like I was talking about with asset protection, we can set up a trust and move some money around. And after 3 years, you would qualify for this pension if you are a veteran or a surviving spouse. Next slide. So what are we talking about? It's a lot of money that is essentially sitting on the table. The VA is not telling you. So these are the amounts. So if you're a veteran who, and when they say dependent, it's usually if you're married. I always think that's like so old school, you know, your wife is your dependent. So these are the amounts that you could qualify for. One thing that I do want to point out is sometimes the veteran is the healthy one and his spouse is the more frail one. They still qualify. You basically would qualify for this pension. It's tax-free every month for the rest of your life. The other thing to know is that these amounts are getting ready to go up. So Social Security is going up, I think 8.7%. So these amounts will go up 8.7% as well. We just haven't gotten those actual amounts yet. The way we do these, you can apply on your own, but the VA can make it pretty challenging to get everything done. But we have our VA specialist as a veteran herself, and I think she secretly really likes arguing with the VA. But what we do is we apply for this. We file a letter of intent. So basically we do that at the end of each month. So we're getting ready to file our letter of intents for December 1st. And then even if the VA takes 6 months to determine, yes, your application is valid and you do qualify for this, you get back paid to the day we filed the letter of intent. And it's really, there's no rhyme or reason to it. We have some that have come through within 6 weeks, and we have some that are still waiting after 6 months. It's the VA, so nobody ever knows, but at least you're getting back paid to that time. So that is just kind of one of the pensions that's money sitting out there that a lot of people don't know about. Next slide. And then life care planning, I kind of alluded at the beginning of our conversation. So our law firm is a little bit different. Basically, our law firm was created by Mr. Kim Kimbrough, and he realized he would have families coming in and he would basically tell them how to get mom to qualify for Medicaid, how to set up the legal documents. This is paperwork you need. But then they would be like, okay, well, what do I do with mom? How do I know when she needs to move into a community or when it's not safe for her to be at home? So our firm's a little bit different. We have life care planning, which is what I do. We're basically a geriatric social workers, and our families have access to unlimited access to us for a year at a time, and then they usually just keep renewing. And so we help them with the care needs, figuring out, you know, I always say that people, when they get a diagnosis, especially you know, something significant, congestive heart failure, COPD, Alzheimer's, people are like, okay, I got that diagnosis. And then the next step is a nursing home. And I always say the diagnosis is the letter A, the nursing home is the letter Z, and there are a lot of steps in between those two before you maybe need to be in a nursing home, and you might not even need to be at a nursing home. So that's kind of what we do. That's kind of us in a nutshell. I think, let's see if there's, I think the next slide is questions. Oh, this just talks about how our firm, kind of everything intersects. The nice thing about it too is that you basically, because you have access to me, you have access to the attorney. So when I have a client who's had a big life change and I know is going to need to move into a different community, I can go and make sure all of the financial decisions we've made are in place to support them. Next slide. And then this is just some of the benefits of life care planning. I'm not going to go into this too much. You guys can always call if you need us, but we're basically, I say that the client is the elder, but the caregivers a lot of times are who we end up talking to just as much, if not more. So we have a lot of families that are out of state. This is really common nowadays in our society, that families don't all live in the same state anymore. So just trying to support people, we're kind of the boots on the ground. Next slide. And then basically, I always tell people, You are at a stronger point when you are proactive rather than reactive. You have more time to make better decisions, more thought out decisions. We get a lot of calls from people who are in the hospital. Mom's getting ready to, they're telling me they're going to send her home tomorrow morning and I don't know what to do. And we help them. But there's a part of me sometimes when I start seeing these families that I'm like, okay, there was a lot of signs leading up to this. And now you're in a crisis mode and it's much harder to make really good, well thought out decisions at that time. So I really suggest that people be planning ahead. Next slide. And then I guess if we have any questions, I don't know. And if not, that's fine too.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Robin, for sharing this information. I see Tony has a question. So Tony?
Yeah, what about those services online that are there to help you set up a will for like a couple of $100?
Mm-hmm.
Are those wills valid in the state of Georgia?
They are. If you have a simple will, where you could potentially run into issues with that is if it was contested. So if there was any fighting or it wasn't clear who owned the home, or sometimes it gets complicated if there are multiple people who own a home. I know sometimes, so like we have a client who passed away without a will. Well, she wasn't our client, her children are now. And they're trying to figure out, because basically they're all inheriting this house. And, there's a lot of drama that goes in between there. But yes, most of those wills are fairly valid. As long as you have something that's a simple will. The other thing I suggest too is that we do what we call codicils, where you can add things, because sometimes, and that just has to be a handwritten thing that you sign and have witnessed. So maybe you did your will and then you inherited your great grandmother's jewelry. And now you're like, oh, I don't want to have to redo my whole will because now I need to put in there who I'm going to leave great grandma's jewelry to. You can do a codicil, which is just a page. And we do those as part of our will too. So that way you don't have to come back, but you can always add things. If you inherit things, you win the lottery, whatever. You can always make sure if you do a will or you do a will online, that you get codicils. So that way you can add those things that come up without having to redo the whole document. It's also good to update your will. So I pulled my will out. My oldest son is 21 and I did a will right when he was born. And like, I have to update it. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm a different person than I was 21 years ago. So it is good to just kind of look at them every once in a while and update them.
Any other generic questions?
Sorry?
I said, any other generic questions for Robin? And again, as I've mentioned to this group, you will receive information in the next week or so that has Robin's contact information. She's in the Athens, Georgia area, go dogs, as am I. So, but I'm assuming in this day of technology, you do Zoom kinds of things. And so.
Yeah, we can do Zoom things. If you are in a different state or your family is in a different state, obviously our attorneys aren't licensed in states outside of Georgia. But we do a lot of Zooms. It can get a little tricky at signings, but we can do Zoom signings. You just have to potentially have a notary there with you to notarize the documents. So we do sometimes do that as well. We're doing that. We have a family in Savannah and she just can't travel anymore. The mother, she used to be our client up here and then they moved to Savannah. So they're going to go to the bank and do a signing with us on Zoom.
Wow.
Yeah.
Technology is our friend.
It's amazing.
Robin, again, thank you so much. I hope you feel better from your cold and we will touch base again soon.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Lisa Underwood, who is on the chair of the TRS Monitoring Committee, is going to talk to us about the basics of TRS. And the TRS Monitoring Committee meets every other month in Atlanta, and they do have a virtual component at 10:30 in the morning. And if you are still active, an active GAE member, an active education employee or professional, then at 10:30 in the morning, you're doing your job on these Wednesday mornings. So one of the things the GAE retired organization is that we do is attend these meetings so that we can keep an eye on TRS. So Lisa, thank you for doing this. And I just need to know, are you sharing your PowerPoint and you're muted, or am I sharing?
Well, you've already got everything. If you could share, that'd be great.
Okay, I will pull it up, I hope. And we will start. Are you there? Yes?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Lisa Underwood, as Karen just said, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning. Okay, this is our website for our TRS for the state of Georgia, for our retirement system for teachers. If you have not ever visited this website, I strongly encourage you to do so. Wherever you are in your career, at some point, you know you want to retire. And this website has all sorts of podcasts, all sorts of great information for you to find out how to retire, when to retire, how much money you can have when you retire, and just really all the ins and outs of what you need to know. There's also a member component where you sign up for your MyTRS with a login so that you can manage your personal information. And as I said, wherever you are in your career, it is very important for you to go ahead and set this up and keep your password and things in a safe place so you can continue to go back and visit and see where you are. And up here in the top, it's got MyTRS login. Okay, our teachers' retirement system has $89 billion in assets. It is very lucrative. It is a very stable asset. We have 231,000 plus actively contributing members. Those are the teachers who are actively working and paying into TRS. And then we have 144,963 retired members. So we have more people contributing than we have people taking out of our assets. The 89 billion is down a little bit from what it has been in the past, because as you know, our stock market and our economy has been going through some things and some dips, but 89 billion is still a substantial amount of money, and we're fine. Okay, next slide. Okay, and here we go with our service retirees. In August, we had in 2022, we had 144,785 retirees, and that went up a little bit, you can see, from August to September, because a few more people retired. I'm actually in that category right there. I received my last teacher paycheck from the school system at the end of August. So then September 1st, I flipped over into this other column for September. And then you can see our average monthly benefit just from August to September. Not much change there. And here was an interesting number to me when I attended the September meeting. Mostly, and I came into education late. I didn't start my teaching career until I was 36 years old. So I did not work for 30 years because I didn't want to work till I was 67. But I just thought everybody worked 30 years and that it was rare. And our average service credit is actually around 25 and a half years, which is about what I have. I have actually 26 years. And I thought that was very interesting. A lot of people do come into education later. They don't start when they're 22, or they do start when they're 22 and they take some time off to raise children and then go back in. So, it's not start when you're 22, retire when you're 52. We've got a lot of different variables in people, who become educators. The average age at retirement is 59. So again, you don't have everybody retiring at the age of 20, retiring at 52. Okay, and then if you average together all the people who are retired, those who are retired at 52, as well as those who are 85, and you average them all together, the average age of the retiree receiving benefit is 71. Because we do have some people who've, have been retired for quite some time, and they're still out there. Okay, and
I
our
think, Lisa,
total,
there's a
Yes.
handful of people who are 100 plus receiving TRS benefits. So I think we all aspire to that number at least.
and the wonderful thing about having, where you saw that $89 billion in assets, no matter how long you live, you are still going to be getting your TRS check. It is not going to run out. So that is terrific. That is great. Okay, and then the total benefits that are paid out each year, $489 million, and that changed only slightly from August to September. Okay, and then the EFT, Karen, help me out with that one.
That's just the percentage of people receiving TRS pensions who have them deposited automatically in their account every month, the electronic
Gotcha,
transfer.
gotcha.
So there are some, not of us, but there are some retirees who want that paper check still every month.
Okay. Okay, when you are preparing to retire, you will meet either in person or virtually with a TRS representative. You can talk to them on the phone. The TRS is very accessible for educators. They want to be there for you to answer any questions you may have, but you have a number of options for how you will receive your retirement check. Your first option, your member, you can, let's see, you could take a lump sum, leaving a refund. Okay, that's just the option one. Okay, at retiree's death, beneficiary receives same monthly benefit amount. Okay, at retiree's death, beneficiary receives 1/2 of the monthly benefit amount. Then you can have option 4, at retiree's death, the beneficiary receives a monthly amount specified by the retiree, and the beneficiary would be, for example, a spouse. All right. And then you have options 2 and 3, which are pop-up. Okay, as you can see, over half of retirees do take the maximum amount, where they just take the maximum amount they can take out of their retirement, and they aren't sharing it with anyone. Okay, then you have others, who do these other options. The pop-up is interesting if you're married. My husband and I both retired as educators, and we both did that option 2 pop-up, where we both take a little bit less. And if I die first, then he still gets the same amount I'm getting now, and then his reverts back to the maximum. And then if he dies first, I would still get the same amount of his check that he's getting now, but mine would revert back to the maximum. So it is important that you talk to a TRS professional, and they can guide you and answer questions to help you pick the very best option for you and your family and your beneficiaries, your spouse, if you are married.
And that was just a quick overview of the various options.
Mhm.
Later on this morning, our representative, Mike Zarum from TRS, will go a little bit more into detail about each of those.
But do talk to them, because you don't have to make these decisions by yourself, because it is complicated. Okay, and then we'll talk about the difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution. And then we will talk about the TRS formula and how TRS is funded. Okay, first off, defined benefit versus defined contribution. Okay, we will compare 2 different types of pension plans. Our pension plan, TRS, is a defined benefit. A defined benefit, as we just mentioned before, your TRS check is guaranteed for life. The income stream stays permanent, and we'll talk about this later, but there will be raises. The defined contribution, this is more like a 401k or something like that. You contribute to your fund. It's not guaranteed for life. When you take all the money out, it's gone. When you spend it, it's just gone. You just have to set it up some kind of way, but it is not guaranteed for life. And that is a major difference between our teachers' retirement benefit and other retirement plans where people made their contributions. In a defined benefit, the employer invests the contributions. Okay, your employer is responsible. The school system you work for is responsible for investing those contributions. They take the TRS from your paycheck and it is invested for you. And the employer also contributes to your teacher's retirement. And a defined contribution, for example, a 401k, the employee is responsible for setting up those contributions and deciding how much is taken out. You cannot decide how much TRS is taken out of your paycheck. If you work in a corporation and you have a 401k, you decide, the employee decides how much they're going to invest, and they are responsible for that. And if they don't invest anything, there just won't be anything. Okay? Because the employer has no responsibility. Sometimes they will match something, but they're not responsible for that investment. Okay, the defined benefit, if you contact TRS Monday, they will be able to tell you exactly what your monthly benefit would be if you retired right now. Okay, so you would know, you're going to be able to know exactly the amount of your income so that you can make a plan for your retirement and how you can live on that. In a defined contribution, the amount of retirement income is unknown. It fluctuates depending on the economy, depending on the stock market. If you have got some investments, you may have seen that you've taken a pretty good hit on them because they've gone down quite a bit with the stock market going down. But your TRS is going to be the same, and you will be able to tell exactly what you're going to have. And that is another big difference. With our defined benefit, we have inflation protection and we have survivor benefits that are built in. Inflation protection, we'll talk about that again with a future slide. But when there is inflation, we do get a COLA, cost of living raises, that go along with our teachers' retirement benefit. With a defined contribution, that does not happen. That is not built in. In fact, if you have someone who has a 401k, we have extreme inflation right now. The stock market's down, so their 401k has gone down, but the cost of living has gone up, and there is no inflation protection in a defined contribution. Okay, why have a defined benefit retirement plan? Okay, this is very important. Okay, the value of our defined benefit plan, this is a major recruiting tool to get people to come into our profession. I told you I did not become a teacher until I was 36. I worked in industry prior to that. And one of the things after I had a child and I had a family, and I started seeing the draw with being an educator. I always wanted to be a teacher, but then once I had a family, I just thought, okay, this is the best way to really guarantee my family will have what we need when I'm older. Retention is also very important. We all know people who have left the profession, sometimes even midway through their profession. I know some teachers who this past year left at 15, 16 years. They've got a lot of time invested in education and things happened and they left. Part of this retention for educators, when I was at the TRS meeting in September, Dr. Evans, Buster Evans, was telling us that the most productive years a teacher has are the years 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. Those 5 years are their most productive years. And when we have teachers who leave before that, we're losing the very best years where they have the greatest impact on our children and our students. So the best way to keep teachers is have a midpoint meeting, like a little workshop with them, so that they can understand their teacher's retirement and say, I'm having a bad year, but maybe I can just stick this out and I'll have a better year next year and I won't leave, because I do want to get to that 30 or that 25 years and retire and have this fantastic defined benefit. So this is a very, very important retention tool for teachers. Okay, and retirement. You get to retire with dignity and honor. You know how much money you're going to have. You get raises every year, and it's never going to run out, so that you can retire and live and not have to worry about that part. Okay, so next, what is the TRS formula? Okay, service retirement. You do have those people who start teaching when they're young, and you have to have 30 years of credible service. If you start when you're 22 years old, you can retire when you're 52 because you've got 30 years in. You just have to have 30 years in if you're under 60. Okay, if you are 60, you only have to have 10 years of credible service, but you have to be 60. So those people who started late, like I did, when you turn 60, you can retire with however many years you have, as long as it's at least 10. You have to have at least 10 years. So then it can be anything in between. If you start teaching when you're 29, you get 30 years at 59. So you still have to get the 30 years. If you're going to be under 60, you've got to have 30 years in. Okay, and here is the formula. Each year you work, you have 2%, that's the multiplier. You gain 2% of your income for every year you work. So you work 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you have to have at least 10 years to be vested. If you retired at 10 years, if you turn 60 years old and you've only got 10 years in, it's 2% each year. So it would be basically 20% of your pay. Okay. So as the years of service, the multiplier is 2% with your highest average salary. And then that will equal your monthly benefit.
That's your maximum benefit. And your highest average salary, I believe, Lisa, is 24 consecutive months. So again,
Yes.
as was mentioned, it might be mid-career. It might not be your last 24 months, but it has to be 24 consecutive months.
Yes, for example, you may have someone who moves into the district office into a position that pays higher than a classroom teacher. And then at some point they go back to the classroom, and they may do that for 10 more years, but their highest income may have been at that district level. But yes, whenever those highest 24 months are, and you may have heard that called like the high two. Okay. All right. So then if you have 30 years and it's 2% for each of those 30 years, and you earn $50,000 a year that's your highest 24 consecutive months, then that would equal $30,000. And then you would say that that goes down to your monthly income, which I'm covered up. I couldn't see that one. Okay. And then if you have 40 years, and there are people who do 40 years, there really are. If you have 40 years, then that's going to be 2%. That's going to take you up to 80% of your pay. So if you made $60,000 a year and then retired, you would have $48,000 per year would be your pay. Beyond 40 years, it doesn't keep going up after that. I mean, I do know some people who have worked more than 40 years, but it doesn't keep going up. It just, that's the highest it'll go is 80%. Okay. Unused sick leave credit. This is also very important. I benefited from that. I had about 1.5 years of sick leave, which added to my retirement. I actually worked 25 years, but I retired with 26.5 years because I had all those sick days that I did not use. So 20 days of unused sick leave is 1 month of service. So you can have 9 months of sick leave credit would be 1 year, and that would add to your retirement. My husband retired with 30 years and he had 2 years of sick leave. So he has 32 years and that he's receiving a benefit from TRS. Because that sick leave, that is really nice. So when you're having that day where you're thinking, I just need to have a day because I'm just tired, you could think, well, at the end of all of my career, I'm going to have this day. Do I really need to stay home? So this is also an incentive because we do want the teachers to be at work, because when you're not there, the substitute cannot replace you. So this is just an incentive to go to work. Okay, and this, the legislature does this periodically. They look at something and they think, oh my goodness, that's not really very fair for them to be able to take those sick days. Take those sick days and add them to their retirement, even though that is supposed to be an incentive to help people go to work, to keep us in the classrooms. So they pop up with legislation here and there to change things and take things away from us. They tried this back in 2020 with this House Bill 109. They wanted to change it where the sick leave did not count for people employed after July 2020. This is where your retirees are very, very helpful to our active teachers. When you're in the classroom, you do not have time to keep up with all of these things. I actually knew this was happening, but I didn't have time to write letters and send emails and call people. But our retired teachers did. And that's what they do. And now I'm part of that team as well. So when the legislature tries to mess things up for teachers, the retirees swamp them with phone calls and letters and emails, and we kill it. So this piece of legislation did not pass. So those people hired after 2020 also get to collect their unused sick leave and apply that to their retirement. Okay, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Each year, the retirees get a 1.5% cost of living increase every January and another 1.5 cost of living increase in July. It's very important that this wording not be changed because currently we do get this. It says we will get a cost of living raise in January and in July. And this, like I said, this is very important. Okay, we had a piece of legislation that tried to change the wording of this, where it would say 3% or less COLA awarded annually, which didn't have it twice a year. It just lumped it in once a year, which actually changes it changes it. It would have actually reduced how much the raise was each year. And our retirees, because I was working when this was happening, our retirees wrote letters, sent emails, and called legislators and killed this. So we owe them a lot. Okay, these are just a bunch of different pension reforms that our legislators have tried to do with our retirement. And so it's an ongoing war to keep monitoring what is happening in our legislature so that we protect our retirement benefits for those who are already retired and those who are just beginning their careers, so that when they retire, they will have that security as well. These are just some different things that they've tried to mess with. We just talked about the sick leave, the multiplier, they've tried to bother that, minimum age to retire. These are just different things that have come up over the years from the legislature. Okay. I'm trying to see, let's see where I can, there I can see. Okay, biennium. This is how legislation works. Retirement legislation that has a fiscal impact can only be introduced during the first year of a 2-year session. And that it can only be acted on during the second year. So when there is a fiscal impact, the legislature starts talking about it. Let's say if they talked about it this session, it cannot be acted on until next year.
So we are starting in January 9th, the first year of a 2-year biennium. And that's why I said earlier, from what I'm hearing, there is movement afoot perhaps to manipulate some of the factors that Lisa just shared on the slide before, and manipulate some of those so that TRS isn't as costly as it is.
Okay, and this, there's been other legislation where there's talk about changing how the investments are done with TRS. Even with the market being so unsteady right now, we still have $89 billion in assets with TRS. That has had a high of $102 billion, but the hit that our retirement system has taken is less than other investment places. I mean, one of the things that was said at the last TRS meeting, our TRS has gone down some, but even the state of Georgia's investments have gone down far more than our TRS assets. So we really do like to monitor how our money is invested and changes that the legislation proposes to do things that may be less stable.
And so this piece of legislation did pass a couple years ago that would allow up to 5% to be of the investments of TRS to be placed in alternative investments. So that did pass.
Yes. Okay, and we just talked about the formula and how is TRS funded. Okay. I like this slide. This is very interesting to me. Okay, bucket one is the employee contribution. This is what you have taken out of your paycheck each month for your teacher's retirement benefit. Okay, and you can see that in this bucket, this is just really a drop in the bucket, just a little change in the bottom. That is your contribution that as a teacher, you put in for your TRS. Your employer contributes more. So then you add on what your school system puts in for you, and that brings your bucket to about half full. Okay, then there's the investment piece. Okay, this money goes into the teacher's retirement assets, and that's where the $89 billion comes in. And then that fills your bucket all the way up to the top, which gives you a paycheck for the rest of your life after you retire. The investments that TRS does on your behalf is where the majority of your retirement money comes from. You can see your contribution in bucket number one is a very small amount of money compared to how much you do end up getting to take in your final bucket.
Whoops, sorry.
Okay, and then these are just the rates. The employee, you generally put in 6% of your gross income into TRS each month. Okay, that is your employee contribution. And then you can see that the employer contribution has changed. It's changed. It's gone up quite a bit from what it was even in 2011, where they only put in 10%. But that has gone up quite a bit. At one point, it did get over 20%, 21%. And for 2022, the employer rate of contribution is 19.81%. So you can see from that bucket, you put in a little bit, the employer puts in more, and then it all gets invested. And that's where your big money really comes from. Okay, and then this is just really showing our net position. Like I said, we had, and if you can see up here at the top, back in December, last December, our assets exceeded $105 billion. And as you know, our stock market's been having a rocky time of it. So our money has gone down, our assets have gone down some. And we went down to 87 billion, and now we're back up to 89 billion. So we have recovered some. I will tell you that was pointed out in the September meeting. 10 years ago, our net position was around 52 billion. So in 10 years, we've gone from 52 billion, and even at the 89 billion, we've come down a little bit, but we're still in a very, very good place. Okay. Okay, so go ahead.
You want me to do this one, Lisa?
Yes, that'd be great.
Thanks. So I like this slide a lot, and Lisa has alluded to this. We're just going to pretend we had a teacher was age 59 and retired a little over 10 years ago. And in 8 years later, she had been paid over that span of time a little over $370,000 in her retirement pension. Well, of that $370,000, again, a drop in the bucket over that period of time was the employee contributions. It's about 12% of that overall amount. And then we got the employer putting in more, but it isn't even half of what the investment income is. So TRS, as Lisa's saying, does an excellent job with our investments. You can't go talk to the investors at the TRS building in Atlanta. You can't go up to that floor. You can't attend an investment meeting, but they're doing okay without our help. So this is just another way of representing where most of the TRS money comes from. And
that's just, I just wanted to tell you, I know, and maybe you know people who have done this as well. I mean, I knew a teacher that her nephew went into some investment thing and he wanted her to pull out her TRS and invest it with him. And she did it. Okay, she did it. And 10 years after she was retired, I saw her at Dillard's because she's working because her money ran out. So nobody can invest your money better than your teacher's retirement. Just no matter what, don't take that out. No matter what somebody promises you, nobody else can make this money go farther for you than TRS.
Well said, Lisa. And speaking of TRS, this is a short 2-minute video that kind of recaps where we've been on our journey with TRS this morning.
Educators do more than just teach. They fulfill a promise to serve and strengthen our communities, all throughout their careers. At the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia, we think educators deserve a promise too. That's why we're dedicated to helping them retire with confidence and financial security, so they can impact their community even beyond their careers. In 1943, the State General Assembly established TRS to provide retirement security to those who dedicate their lives to educating Georgia's children and adults. Today, TRS is the largest public retirement system in Georgia. In fact, with $80 billion in assets, we're ranked in the top third of all pension funds. We manage hundreds of thousands of active retirement accounts. And while TRS pays more than $5 billion a year in benefits to retired members and their beneficiaries, approximately $8 billion is pumped back into the local communities in the state of Georgia. You see, TRS doesn't only help teachers, we also help to boost our local economy. Every dollar paid in state and local pension benefits goes on to generate an even greater total output. Say our retiree receives a pension payment, then uses it toward the purchase of a home. From contractors and builders to mortgage brokers and real estate agents, everyone involved is put to work, earning and spending money in our local economy. That in turn means even more business, more hiring, more jobs, all right here in Georgia. And remember, The majority of funds in our members' accounts comes from investment income. But unlike 401k and 403b plans, pensions aren't tied to the stock market. Whether stocks go up or down, TRS benefits stay the same from month to month for stability retirees can count on. Our teachers' careers start with a promise. With the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia, their retirement does too. Because the way we see it, a pension is a promise our members can rely on and retire on. Visit trsga.com and learn more today.
And that's just, whoops, let me switch slides. That's just, again, one of the many videos that's available at the TRS website. So wealth of information. So Lisa? I think we've talked about these 3 topics.
Yes, we have.
And are there any generic questions about TRS? Again, we'll have the person from TRS present later on specifically about more about the logistics of retiring. But any questions? And if Lisa hasn't been forceful enough, if they're going to mess with our TRS system in this upcoming General Assembly, we need everybody to be vigilant. And
Yes.
Lisa, when she attends the TRS meetings, writes a lovely report that's linked in GAE Communications, GAE Retired
Mhm.
Communications, on our GAE Retired Facebook page. So now that y'all are close to retirement, please pay attention in case the people who are elected who think they know best for public education, if they attempt to change it in some way. So
Yes.
questions for Lisa?
Thank you. Yes, good morning. This is Kimberly Tate, and it's a general question about early retirement in the sense of I've been teaching 30 years, but only 22 in Georgia. I didn't buy my years when I first came in. So I wanted to know about early retirement, like 25 years. But do you have to be the age, like if I have 25 years in Georgia, can I do early retirement?
And Kimberly, I'm going to hold that question until Mike Zarum from TRS gets on later, because again, he'll talk about the logistics of retirement and buying service credit out of state. And since he works for TRS, we surely, as GAE retired, don't want to give any misinformation. So if you could be a little patient, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Lisa, thank you. And thank you for attending the TRS meetings. We're glad you're there.
Well, I really do enjoy it. We've got the next TRS board meeting is next week, next Wednesday morning. And then I will be filing a report with what is discussed during that meeting, because it's very interesting. And don't forget your homework. Go to the TRS website, and if you have not already done so, create an account and just kind of check out some of the things at that website. But that is your homework. Go ahead and set that account up so you'll already be prepared.
Excellent. Thanks again. And there, I see the question in the chat too about the 24 consecutive months and the June 1st. I'm going to wait till Mike gets here, just so, because he does a great job of explaining those kinds of logistics. Kim, I see your hand.
Yes. So I already have my TRS set up, but the videos you keep talking about on the website, I've never seen those. And I saw in the ticker at the bottom some of the videos I'd like to see. So do we have time?
What I'm trying to do right now is pull up the TRS website and share that really quickly. And of course, does my computer want to work this morning? Here we go. So let me get back to Zoom and share screen. So when you go, and I just put in the trsga.org, and it automatically defaults to the login page.
Mm-hmm.
Click the logo, and then I just do these pull down menus. And I think, yep, it's under newsroom if you're seeing this, multimedia. And there are videos about your beneficiaries, some of the legislation explained. So, but that's where you get it. It's under newsroom on what I would call the whole homepage. And I also see the URL is trsga.com/multimedia. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, I never knew that as many times as I've been on that site. Thank you.
You are welcome. Lisa, thank you so much for what you have shared this morning. And we are going to move on with our agenda, I hope. Anise, are you ready for me to screen share?
Yes, ma'am, and I can share my screen if you want me to.
Oh, that would be great. Then I
Oh.
can get a sip of water would be good. So,
Okay, perfect. Let me pull up my slides and then we'll get ready.
okay. And Anise is from the Social Security Administration. And as I've mentioned repeatedly, but it takes 23 times for people to hear something. I will be sending out information that has all the PowerPoint slides and people's contact information. Give me about a week or so. And then you can go back and look at things at your leisure, because I've been doing these pre-retirement seminars. And again, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Karen Solheim with the GAE Retired Organization and serving on the GAE Board of Directors. I've been retired now over 10 years, and I still hear something I go, I didn't know that. So lots of information today. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you might be just where you need to be. And if you're not feeling overwhelmed, I think after Anise is through, you might be. But Anise, thank you for being here this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Anise Norman from Social Security, and what I want to do for you is to give you a general overview of your Social Security retirement benefits. One of the things that you need to understand is that Social Security, it was never designed to replace your pre-retirement income. It's only going to replace approximately 40%. So that means that if you know that 40% of your retirement income is going to come from Social Security, you need to think about your other sources, such as your pensions. Do you have any annuities, VA compensation? Do you have money in your savings? And when you add it all up, you need to look to see, will it be enough to sustain you in retirement? Because most financial planners will tell you that you're going to need somewhere between 70 to 80% of that pre-retirement income to live comfortably in retirement. And I'm hoping that by the end of my piece of the presentation today, that you'll have a good idea of what your Social Security piece would be. So let's go ahead and get started here. First up, what you're going to see on the screen is our webpage at socialsecurity.gov. This is going to be one of your kind of starting points for basic information about retirement, when it's time to enroll in Medicare, what online services that we offer that you can conduct business with Social Security from home. You want to come here, but also I want to show you how to locate your local servicing Social Security office if you need to contact that office. Currently, our offices are open for walk-in traffic, and they've been open since April, but we do encourage individuals that whenever possible to contact that local servicing office, because depending on your issue, it may be something that we can assist you and resolve via the telephone with you. So how you're going to find your local office is from this main Social Security webpage. You're going to scroll down to the bottom of the screen until you see so a blue box at the bottom that is called items of interest. Here you're going to look for the telephone emblem that says contact us. So when you click on the telephone, it takes you to a second landing page. On the second landing page, what I need you to do is to scroll down to the bottom of the screen until you see the option of office locator or ways to contact us. Again, you're going to click on the option that says office locator, and this is going to bring us to the screen that says how to locate your servicing office. From here, you enter your zip code and you press the locate button. And what it will bring up for you is your local servicing Social Security office's address, but also their local 800 number to speak with someone directly in the local office. And of course, you can always contact us at our national 800 number. And that number is 800 772 1213, where you would speak to a representative. And of course, they would then refer that information back to your local servicing office. So I just like, to cut out the middleman and just goes directly to that local servicing office. So let's talk about when you're thinking about retiring with Social Security. What do you need to know? First of all, the right time to start to receive that cash benefit from Social Security, that's going to be your very own personal decision. You have to look at your own situation to assess when do you want to start to receive that cash benefit. You have to figure out what is the right age. The earliest point that you can start to take a cash benefit from Social Security is at age 62. But you need to be aware that if you start that benefit as early as age 62, there is a permanent reduction on that benefit. So instead of you receiving 100% of your benefit, you're going to receive somewhere between 70 to 75% of your benefit over the lifetime that you would receive this benefit. And then the only potential increases you would receive are going to be those COLA or cost of living increases. And those are going to be determined by the Bureau of Statistics. For next year, we already know that beneficiaries will receive a 8.7% increase in the benefit that they will receive in January of next year. Another thing to consider is, do you plan to work once you've started to receive that cash benefit from Social Security? Because if you do, and if you are under your full retirement age, then there's going to be earnings limits that you need to be aware of. And I'll discuss those a little bit later in this presentation. Other thing to consider is, do you plan to enroll in Medicare? One of the things I want to stress is that Medicare is not mandatory. But the thing that you need to understand is that if you do not enroll in Medicare at the very first opportunity that you can enroll, and then you come back later and say, you know what, I changed my mind, I'm ready to enroll in Medicare now, just be aware you could be subject to a 10% penalty for every 12 months that you wait or delay in enrolling in Medicare. And that penalty is for forever and beyond, or infinity and beyond, I should say. It is, you will always be assessed that penalty. It is not a one-time penalty. And then, of course, one of the tools that I'd like to show you or kind of mention to you is our My Social Security account. What the Social Security, My Social Security account will allow you to do is to be able to look at your Social Security information by going to our webpage through our secure portal, where you'd be able to see that estimated benefit as early as age 62, your benefit at your full retirement age, and then the benefit at age 70 if you were trying to maximize that benefit. Where you're going to go to kind of get into this information is, of course, you're going to start again from our Social Security webpage, and then you're going to have the option to click on the My Social Security link. Once you click on that link, now we've made it a little bit easier for new people to kind of create that account. You have the option of either utilizing either ID.me or login.gov, because either one of those platforms will verify your identity for Social Security. Once we verified your identity, it takes you directly to your My Social Security landing page. And this is where you're going to be able to do a few things behind the portal here, such as, number one, if you need a replacement Social Security card, as long as you provide us with information from either a driver's license or a state issued ID. Currently, 45 states are vetted for this process. Georgia is one of those. Then once you provide us that information, we'll process your request, and then your card will come in the mail in about 10 to 14 business days. We do have a new retirement calculator that is behind the My Social Security portal. I went in in, I believe the other day, just to kind of look at my own numbers. And of course, you're going to see this graph on the screen when you arrive showing you again benefit at 62, full retirement age up to age 70. But it also gives you an opportunity to plug in your numbers. So say for example that maybe you're thinking I'm going to retire at 65 in 11 months. You enter that information, then it recalculates what that benefit would be. Of course, it's going to show 62 full retirement age and age 70, but it also shows that new projection point of where you wanted to retire as at for yourself. In addition to that, of course, if you are somebody who's receiving Social Security disability, you go back to work, you can report your wages through the My Social Security portal, where so we would get an alert and then update those earnings to make sure that you are within the designated limits here. If you ever needed to get a benefit verification letter, then instead of contacting the local office, you can log into your My Social Security account, and then you can print that off from the comforts of your own home. Other things that you can do is you can update your address, your telephone number. You can start or change your direct deposit. You can also review letters that you get from Social Security. We call those notices. You're going to have your very own personalized repository, so you can review any letter that you think that you need to go back and take a look at. If you needed a replacement Medicare card or 1099 or 1042 for tax purposes, those items are going to be here as well. But what I usually recommend to individuals is to log into your My Social Security account at least once a year so you can look at your earnings history. When you're looking at that information, what you'll see is a particular year and the gross amount that was reported to Social Security for that year. If you notice that those earnings are not right for you, then you don't have to get upset or anything, because there is an option for you to be able to upload either a W-2 or a tax return to Social Security. We'll get an alert to go back and review this information, and then we'll make the appropriate changes, because those new earnings may make a difference when it comes to us calculating that benefit for you. So let's talk about that. So, how do you qualify for a benefit or that cash payment from Social Security? Well, we all know that we got to work, right? But most importantly, at some point over your working lifetime, you had to have worked for an employer who pays into Social Security. You're going to know that by looking at your pay stub. So if you see that FICA or Social Security taxes are being withheld from your paycheck, then you know that you are paying into Social Security. You need a you can earn, I should say, a maximum of 4 credits per year. So for this year, for 2022, each $1,510 in earnings, that gives you 1 credit. Next year, for 2023, that amount, it goes up to $1,640 in earnings. That will give you 1 credit. You can earn a maximum of 4 credits per year. So at least for this year, for 2022, as long as you've earned at least $6,040, then at the end of the year, you would get your 4 quarters of coverage. The minimum requirement that I tell people to get something from Social Security is that you have to have a minimum of 40 credits. And basically, that means that over your working lifetime, you've worked at a minimum of 10 years working for an employer who pays into Social Security. Then, when you are age 62 or older, you're going to get something from Social Security when it is time for you to retire. Now, how we kind of figure out what that something is, well, first and foremost, we need to understand that your wages are going to be adjusted for different level or changes over time. All I'm saying here is that, say, if you had earnings, say, from the 70s, those are going to be calculated away just a little bit differently from the wages of today. The thing that you need to pay attention to is the second step here that's on the screen. This is where we at Social Security will pull in your highest 35 years of earnings over your lifetime. And a lot of people kind of get confused here with that high 35 years, because some people seem to think it's the last 5 or the last 10 years. That is not true. It is the highest 35 years of earnings over your lifetime. So we pull in your high 35 years of earnings. So say, for example, you're that individual who only did the bare minimum, only worked 10 years. Well, we're going to pull in those 10 years of earnings, but what you have to understand is that 25 zeros will be attached to those 10 years of earnings, because the calculation is always based upon your highest 35 years of earnings over your lifetime. Just on a personal note, when I was looking at my own earnings history, I got really excited because I'm at the point now where I don't have any more 0 years in my calculation. So as I go up or continue to work over my lifetime, some of those lower earning years, like when I was 15 and 16 and working at McDonald's, those years are going to drop off. So that's going to help my benefit amount when it is time for me to retire. So I was really excited the other day looking at it. I'm like, yes, I got rid of all of my 0 years. So I'm happy about that. But when we do pull in that calculation, and then the result of that, or pull in those high 35 years of earnings, I should say the result of that will be the average index monthly earnings, or basically that is equating out to what that monthly benefit would be for you. Now, earlier I mentioned that the earliest point you can start to take a benefit is at age 62, but if you're trying to reach your full retirement age or possibly age 70, we need to figure out what that full retirement age is for you. That is going to be based upon your year of birth. So in the middle column here, find your full retirement age by coming across finding your birth year. Middle column is your full retirement age. And what we're saying here is that if you wait until that particular age to come to Social Security to file for your retirement benefit, you would receive 100% of your benefit. Now, if you elected to take your benefit early at age 62, the last column here shows how much that benefit would be reduced by. So someone like myself, I'm falling the category of being born in 1960 or later. My full retirement age is 67. So if I decided to take my benefit early at 62, then instead of receiving 100% of my benefit off the rip, I'm going to get 70% of my benefit because there is a 30% reduction because I chose to start this benefit early. This next slide that we see here on the screen just gives an example that if a person's full retirement age is 66, and we're going to use $1,000 as the amount of their benefit that they would receive at their full retirement age of 66, but if they choose to take it early, say at 62, well then instead of receiving $1,000 a month, he or she is looking at receiving $750 per month. But let's just say that person whose full retirement age is 66, they're in good health, maybe they want to work a little bit longer, and they've decided they're not ready to take their benefit at 66. Maybe they're trying to get to age 70. If that is the case, this is where you have the opportunity to earn what we call are delayed retirement credits. This means that you can earn up to 8% for every 12 months that you wait or delay in taking that benefit all the way up until age 70. So in this example, instead of this person receiving $1,000 a month at age 70, he or she is looking at receiving $1,320 per month, and that is the gross amount of the benefit. Social Security does not withhold taxes from your Social Security benefit unless you ask us to do so, and then at that point we would deduct federal taxes from your Social Security benefit. But again, that is only if you request us to do so. So in addition to the primary number holder, who else can draw or receive a benefit off of your record? Well, of course, your child, as long as he or she is age 18 or 19 and still in high school, or if you have a child that is not married and we at Social Security are able to determine that their disability started before the age of 22, they also would be eligible to receive a benefit. In addition to your child, then we have your spouse. As long as he or she is age 62 or older with little or no work history, and as long as we can determine that you all are married for at least a year or more, or your spouse can receive a benefit at any age as long as they're caring for that child that is under the age of 16 or disabled. So let's take a moment to look at the potential spousal benefit that your spouse may be able to receive off of your record. Well, the most that your spouse could potentially receive off of your record is up to half of your benefit, and this is what your benefit would be at your full retirement age. This does not include those delayed retirement credits. But in order for your spouse to be able to receive this, then he or she must be at his or her full retirement age. So if your spouse decides, you know what, I'm not going to make it to my full retirement age, I want to start to take this spousal benefit early, say at age 62, well, then instead of them receiving up to half of your benefit, they're looking at receiving approximately 30%. And one of the things that we always look at Social Security is number one, the primary number holder, he or she, number one, has to have filed an application and they've started to receive their benefit off of their own record first, because this kind of opens up the window for the spousal benefit to come into play. The next thing that we need to understand is that a spouse being able to receive this benefit does not reduce what the primary number holder would receive. And of course, we always look to see what that spouse is going to receive off of his or her own record first. And if their amount is less than half of what their spouse would receive, then we're able to combine the two amounts to get that spouse up to half of what the primary number holder's benefit would be. But again, that is only if your spouse is at his or her full retirement age. If they're younger than the full retirement age, then of course there will be a reduction on that potential benefit. Here, let's look to find out what your potential spouse's full retirement age is. So of course, we're going to go to the year of birth column, find what year they were born in. The next column will show what their full retirement age is. We're going to use that same $1,000 from the prior example. And this just shows that if the primary number holder's benefit at their full retirement age is $1,000 a month, then the most that the spouse can receive off of that record is $500, because the most they can receive is up to half. And then of course, the third and the fourth column do show that if either one of those individuals elect to take their benefit early, it shows how much that benefit would be reduced by. Now, in addition to a current spouse, a former spouse may be potentially eligible to draw a benefit off of your record. But in order for them to do that, they're going to have to meet certain criteria. Number one, you had to have been married to that person for 10 years or longer. And when I'm talking about 10 years or longer, I'm talking about 10 consecutive years of marriage. I had someone to ask me the other day, they said, well, I married my ex-husband and we were married for 7 years. Then we got a divorce and then we got back together and we stayed married for 3 more years. Does that count as my 10 years? No, it does not. It needs to be 10 consecutive years of marriage. Of course, you would need to be unmarried now, and you need to be age 62 or older. And in this scenario, the ex-spouse, the person that you're divorced from, all he or she needs to be is age 62 or older and entitled to or eligible for either a Social Security retirement benefit or disability. They do not have to be receiving it. They just need to be eligible for that benefit. And of course, with that divorced spouse, what are we going to do? You got it. We're going to look to see what can this person get off of their own record first. If their amount is less than half of their divorced spouses, then of course we would combine the two amounts to get this divorced spouse up to half of whatever that other person's benefit would be. But again, you must be at your full retirement age to be eligible to receive up to 50%. And I do have a couple of examples here for us, so let's take a look at those. First up, I have Ricky and Lucy. So in this first example, I have that Ricky's receiving $1,200 a month. Half of that is $600. His wife, Lucy, she's ready to file for benefits. And when she does, we check her record. And off of her own record, Lucy is eligible to receive $1,000 a month. So when we do the comparison, we see that her amount is greater or more than half of his. And that just means that Lucy would not qualify for a spousal benefit simply because she can get a larger sum of money off of her own record. So she would not qualify for that spousal benefit. Now, in my second example here, I have Luke and Laura. So in the second example, I have that Laura, she's ready to file for benefits. So she contacts Social Security, she files the application, and then she starts to receive $1,800 a month. When we do the math, half of that is $900. Well, her husband, Luke, he's been receiving benefits for a while now off of his own record in the amount of $600 a month. Now, because Lucy has filed and she started to receive that cash benefit, that opens up the window for Luke to be eligible to receive an additional $300 from Laura's record. So 6 plus 3, that's 9. That's going to be half of Laura's benefit. And he would be eligible to receive that. Now, if Luke or Laura had any eligible children that were eligible to receive a benefit off of Laura's record, they could receive a benefit as well. But one of the things we need to keep in mind that if for whatever reason Laura were to decide to suspend her benefit, stops receiving it for whatever reason, that extra $300 that Luke is getting, that would stop. The benefits for the children, that would stop as well. The exception to this would be the divorced spouse. The divorced spouse would still be able to continue to receive their benefit. Now I want to transition and talk about potential benefits if your spouse were to pass away. So let's look and see who's eligible. First of all up that we have is, of course, your children. As long as your child is age 18 or 19 and still in high school, of course, they would be eligible for a survivor's benefit. And of course, if you have that disabled child, as long as we can determine, number one, they're not married and that disability began before the age of 22, they also would be eligible to receive a benefit. Then we have the widow, the widower, or the divorced widow or widower. So what are they looking at receiving? Well, they can start to receive reduced benefits as early as age 60, or they can wait until their full retirement age to start receiving benefits, or they could start to receive these benefits at any age as long as they're caring for a child that is under the age of 16 or they have that disabled child. And then, of course, this last bullet just says divorced widow or widowers may qualify. And that's simply meaning that you must meet the divorced spouse's criteria, meaning that you were married to that person for at least 10 years or longer, currently not married, and you are age 62 or older in order to qualify for that divorced spouse's widow or widower's benefit. So when we're looking at the widow or widower's benefit, what's the potential benefit? Well, if you start to take this benefit as early as age 60, then you're looking at receiving approximately 71.5% of the deceased worker's amount. If you were to start to take this benefit at 60, then when you turn age 62, one of the things we're going to look at Social Security is to determine whether or not you can get a higher benefit off of your own record. And if that is the case, we would switch you to your own record so that you could get the higher amount. Now, if you waited until you were age 62 to come to Social Security to apply for a survivor's benefit, you're looking at receiving 82.5% of the deceased worker's amount. Or if you wait until your full retirement age, then you're going to be eligible to receive 100% of the deceased worker's amount. This also allows you the opportunity to leave your benefit alone, let it continue to grow up until age 70. At that point, we at Social Security, we need to swing back around, take another look to see, can you get a higher benefit off of your own record? And if that is the case, we would switch you to the higher record. And then, of course, this last bullet talks about full benefits are available to the widow, the widower, and the divorced widow or widower. All we're saying here is that if the person who passed away, if they had a current spouse, they would be eligible to draw a benefit or to receive a survivor's benefit. And then if they were divorced from someone who meets the divorced spouse's criteria, they also would be eligible to receive a benefit off of the record. One of the questions we get quite a bit at Social Security, everybody wants to know is, can I receive my cash benefit from Social Security and go back to work? The short answer is yes, you can, but you need to understand what you are up against. And so for this year, for 2022, if you are under your full retirement age, meaning that if you took that cash benefit somewhere between 62 and before you reach your full retirement age, for this year, you can work and earn up to $19,560 for the year. Breaking that down to a monthly amount, that comes down to $1,630 per month. As long as you don't go over, you're good. But if you do, then we're going to send you a letter in the mail letting you know that we paid you too much in benefits, and then we're going to deduct from your from that Social Security benefit that you're getting $1, or I should say you're going to have to pay us back $1 for every two that you went over. Now for next year, for 2023, that earnings limit, it goes up to $21,240 for the year. Then in the year where you would reach your full retirement age, the earnings limit, it goes up. Currently, it is at 51,960 for the year. For next year, for 2023, it is $56,520,000 for the year. Again, as long as you don't go over, you're good to go. But if you do, then you're going to have to pay us back $1 for every 3 that you go over. So let's just say, for example, that I'm going to reach my full retirement age, and I'm going to say this year, and I'm going to use August. So what that means is, for me, is that I can work and earn from January 1st through July 31st. I can work and earn up to 51,960 for the year. As long as I don't go over, I'm good. But if I do, then I'm going to have to pay back to Social Security $1 for every 3 that I went over. Now, when August 1st comes around, even though my birthday is later in the month, at August 1st, there is no limit to how much I can work and earn. We tell people all the time, you can make $1 million. Social Security will not care. But then we also remind individuals that you need to be aware that then IRS is going to care, because then they're going to have their hand out wanting their piece of the puzzle, or the piece of the pie, I should say. So just be aware of that. The other question that I usually get with regarding to going back to work while receiving that cash benefit from Social Security, goes a little bit something like this. Someone will say, well, I took my Social Security benefit at age 62. I decided to go back to work working for an employer who's paying into Social Security. So what happens to those new earnings? Well, I'm glad you asked, because what will happen is when you reach your full retirement age, at that point, we at Social Security, we will go back and recalculate your high 35 years of earnings. We're going to look to see, do these new earnings make a difference? If they do, what will happen is we will send you a letter in the mail that will say something to the gist of, this is what we paid you. This is what we should have paid you. We send you the difference in the money. And then what you're going to notice is now you're going to have a new monthly benefit amount. But we don't recalculate that benefit until you reach your full retirement age. Then at that point, we would go back and recalculate that benefit for you. The other question we typically get asked a lot is whether or not the Social Security benefit is taxable. I always tell people it depends, because we're going to have to look at your adjusted gross income from your tax return. You add to that any non-taxable interest you may have, and whatever you're receiving in Social Security benefits, cut it in half, add it to that calculation, and the result will be your combined income. Once you get your combined income, then we need to determine, are you filing your taxes as an individual or a member of a couple? If you are an individual, and if that combined income is less than $25,000, you would not pay taxes on the Social Security benefit. If your combined income is between $25,000 to $34,000, you could pay taxes on up to 50% of the Social Security benefit. And if your combined income as an individual is more than $34,000, then you could pay taxes on up to 85% of your benefit. We at Social Security like to make individuals aware of this. This is not a Social Security regulation, but an IRS regulation. So if you have any questions regarding whether or not this would be your Social Security benefit would be taxable, where I'm going to refer you to, it's going to be irs.gov, and you're going to look for publication number 554, which is the tax guide for seniors. Also, I would strongly encourage you that as you're planning or trying to figure out your roadmap to retirement, you may want to touch base with a financial planner or your accountant to talk about these issues and bring these questions up. That way there are no surprises as you transition into retirement. So let's talk about now, when it is time for you to retire, how are you going to contact us? Well, number one, the earliest that you can contact Social Security when it is time for you to apply for that cash benefit or for Medicare is 3 months in advance. 3 months in advance is the earliest that you can contact us. Currently, there are 2 options for you to apply for benefits. Online through your My Social Security account, it's safe, secure, it's very easy. Or you can contact your local servicing office or the 800 number to schedule a telephone appointment. Excuse me. And you can rest assured that if you contact us either online or either via telephone and we take that appointment for you, that you're going to be asked the same series of questions. At the end of the interview, if we need anything from you, such as a marriage certificate, a divorce decree, if we need that financial information to establish that direct deposit, we would let you know. If you filed online, based upon your zip code, that is going to dictate what local servicing Social Security office you will need to get this information into. If you're speaking to a claim specialist, then he or she will kind of advise you on how to get those documents into the office to them so that they can finish adjudicating or processing that claim for you. And usually, here is where I typically tell people that if you have not paid attention to anything that I have said thus far, now it is time for you to perk up because you need to know when you're going to get your money. First of all, we need to understand that Social Security, we don't pay for partial months. You have to be that age throughout the month. So if you were born on the first or the second day of a month, we give you credit for that whole month. The next thing you need to understand is that benefits are paid the month following the month that they're due. So say, for example, if you come into Social Security this month in November to apply for your retirement benefits and you tell us you want your benefits to start in November, that means you do not get that first payment until December because we pay 1 month behind. Then, depending on your day of birth, that will determine what Wednesday of the month you would receive that benefit. So, if your birthday is the 1st through the 10th, that is the second Wednesday of the month. The 11th through the 20th is the third Wednesday of the month, and the 21st through the 31st is the fourth Wednesday of the month. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind in your mental Rolodex as you're planning for retirement. And that way, if you need to kind of save yourself some money to kind of tide you over until that benefit starts, then you can do that. And then once that benefit gets started for you, then you're going to be good to go. And I'm going to go ahead and jump directly into Medicare. And then at the end, I'll stop to see if anybody has any questions for me. Now, what Social Security does with regards to Medicare is very limited. I tell people we do two things when it comes to Medicare. Number one, when it is time for you to enroll in Medicare, Social Security Administration is the federal agency that you need to contact or you need to submit that application into. Secondly, when you are age 65 or older, and if you are receiving a cash benefit from Social Security, then by law, we are required to deduct the Medicare premium out of your Social Security benefit, and we send that over to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services for you. So I tell people we take the application and we take your money. That is the gist of what Social Security does with regards to Medicare. But let's take a look to see who is eligible to enroll in Medicare. Well, first and foremost, individuals who are age 65 or older, anyone who's been on Social Security disability for 24 months or longer, individuals with ALS, or individuals who have permanent kidney failure and receives maintenance dialysis or a kidney transplant are going to be those individuals who can enroll in Medicare. With Medicare, there are 3 enrollment periods that we need to pay attention to. The first up is called the initial enrollment period, or sometimes you may hear us say the IEP. What this is your very first opportunity that you can enroll in Medicare. This is a 7-month window. It starts 3 months before you reach age 65, your birthday month, and 3 months after. This is the first chance that you can enroll in Medicare. The next enrollment period that we may want to pay attention to is called the special enrollment period, or the SEP. This is going to be for those individuals who are age 65 or older who may not have enrolled into Medicare during their initial enrollment period simply because they were still working and they were covered under a group healthcare plan, either their own or their spouses. And then when it is time for you to leave employment, then you have a 8-month window to contact Social Security to enroll in Medicare, and that would be considered timely enrollment. then the last enrollment period is the general enrollment period. This is every year from January 1st through March 31st. Currently, if somebody enrolled in Medicare during the general enrollment period or the GEP, number one, we always look to see what was the first opportunity they could have enrolled, because we have to determine whether or not a 10% penalty will be assessed. The other thing is that if somebody enrolled during this time frame, then their coverage would not start until July of the same year. Well, coming next year, beginning in January, there's going to be a couple of changes that are going to be coming down the pike. So in the general enrollment period or the GEP, yes, we're still going to look to see whether or not we assess a penalty. But if a person enrolls January through March in the general enrollment period, now instead of them waiting until July to be put on the rolls, their coverage will start the next month. So that's going to be a good thing for individuals. Also, for individuals who will be enrolled in the IEP, there's going to be some changes for them for next year. But let's look at the current rules now. As of now, for this year, 2022, if a person enrolls during their initial enrollment period, so say if they enroll 3 months before they reach age 65, coverage starts in your birthday month, the month that you would reach age 65. If you waited until your birthday month to contact Social Security to enroll in Medicare, your coverage starts 1 month later. If you waited 1 month after you have attained the age of 65, coverage starts 2 months down the road. And if you wait 2 or 3 months after reaching age 65, your coverage would start 3 months down the road. That is the current rules. Come January, if you enroll in your initial enrollment period, how it's going to work is that if you enroll 3 months before you reach age 65, your coverage starts the month that you would turn age 65. Then if you wait until any time after you have reached age 65 and you enroll, then your coverage would start the next month, is how it's going to go starting next year in 2023. With Medicare, there are a couple of different options that individuals have here. You can decide to enroll in either original Medicare. This consists of Medicare Part A, your hospital insurance. For most people, you're not going to have to pay a premium for that hospital insurance, because remember earlier when I told you that as long as you have that 40 quarters of coverage with Social Security and you qualify for that Social Security benefit, then A is not going to cost you anything. But if you are someone who has less than 40 quarters of coverage, then the maximum as of this year that you would have to pay for Part A is roughly around $475, and that is per month. Part B, this is your medical insurance. You're going to use this to go see your different doctors or your different specialists here. The base premium for this year for 2022 is $170.10. For next year for 2023, the base Medicare premium, it's going down. It is going down to $164.90. So it's going to save you roughly about $5.10 per month, starting in January. Let's see, Part B. And keep in mind that if you are a higher wage earner, in addition to the base premium, you could have to pay an additional surcharge. Now, with original, or sometimes it's called traditional Medicare, you can choose to add a Medicare Part D plan. This is going to be that prescription drug plan. The cost is going to vary from provider to provider. The average cost is roughly about an additional $34 a month, and that is in addition to that Part B premium, where with the original or traditional Medicare, also you can elect to add, say, a Medigap or a supplemental insurance coverage, something that would help you to pay your copays with you with that. The other option that you may decide to elect is a Medicare Advantage plan or a Part C plan. This is where a private company is following the rules of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they like to bundle together Part A, Part B, Part D, and sometimes they'll throw something extra in, say maybe a gym membership or a hearing or a dental plan, all for a predetermined cost. This is where I caution people and I warn you, you need to do your research to figure out what works best for you and your family. The best place for you to start is going to be medicare.gov, looking at the basic information, telling you what does Part A cover, what does Part B covers, the associated costs with that, and then it explains a little bit more in detail about the Medicare Advantage plans, because typically what people find that when they're dealing with Medicare, normally when they're kind of getting close to that Medicare age, I call it the Medicare tsunami, because this is where you are overwhelmed by all of these companies who are vying for your business, because they're going to send you all of these things in the mail, letters in the mail. You may get text messages, emails, phone calls telling you to pick me, pick me, pick me. I want to be your Medicare provider. But you need to take your time to look to see what each one of these companies, what they offer, and find the best one that will fit your personal situation as to whatever's going on with you, your health, and your family, and whatever type of medications that you have here. Karen, I see you raised your hand. Do you want me to stop here for a moment to address a question?
I just want to say to the group, be very careful when you are researching your health insurance once you retire, because the state health benefit plan allows you to continue on as a retiree and get a Medicare Advantage plan. If you ever go off the state health benefit plan, you cannot say, oops, I made a mistake, and come back on. So approach your retirement health care selection very seriously. Thanks,
And
Anita.
Karen and Anise, let me add that the state health benefit plan, Medicare Advantage, is head and shoulders above anything you can get on the private market. It pays in and out of network doctors the same, in and out of network facilities the same, vision, hearing, all that's covered. So you need to think hard about ever leaving state health benefits plan, because you really can't beat it.
And thank you both ladies for that extra input and information, because I know, like myself being a federal employee, we're kind of in the same boat, that we get to take our health coverage with us into retirement. And that is a rare luxury that a lot of places don't have. And you need to be very careful with that, because I'll reiterate it, that if you ever give it up, you will never, ever, ever get it back. And it will, it may devastate you in some cases. So just be very careful, especially with some of these sales pitches that you may get, because all that person may be looking at is getting you on the rolls. They're not going to be looking at what you may be losing in the process. So just be careful with that. Okay, I have a couple of scenarios here I'm going to walk us through before we wrap this up. This scenario talks about that if a person has started to receive their cash benefit from Social Security, say at age 62, then when it is time for them to enroll in Medicare, do they need to come running into Social Security to enroll in Medicare? The answer is no, because if you started to receive that cash benefit before age 65, we will automatically enroll you in Medicare Part A and Part B. And then the next thing you're going to notice is that you're going to start to see that your benefit has been reduced, because we're going to take that premium out of your Social Security benefit. And we usually do that 3 months in advance. You'll get the letter saying that we've enrolled you into Medicare. You get your red, white, and blue card in the mail. And then the next thing you notice is that we start to deduct those premiums out of your Social Security benefits. So if this scenario is you don't have to do anything. We're going to take care of everything for you. This next scenario talks about that if you're still working at age 65, and remember, as long as you're covered under a group healthcare plan, either your own or your spouse's, then I always tell people you have options. Number one, I always say check with someone in HR to determine whether or not the employer requires you to enroll in Medicare. If they do not, consider enrolling in Medicare Part A only, because remember, A is not going to cost you anything. You're going to tell us, no, I don't want to take B right now because I have coverage through my employer. Then when you leave employment, this is where the 8-month clock starts to tick. You you have 8 months to contact Social Security to enroll in Medicare, and we consider that to be timely enrollment. The other thing I want to mention is that if part of your health insurance coverage is that you have a high deductible health savings account, IRS dictates that you must stop contributions into that HSA 6 months before you can enroll in Part A. That is not a Social Security regulation. Again, this is IRS because there could be some tax implications with this if you don't follow the rules here. You can use whatever's there. You just can't put anything else into it if you're planning to enroll in Medicare Part A. Then the other thing we like to tell people, especially as you're transitioning into retirement, usually if you know you're going to enroll in Medicare, contact us at least 2 months before you leave employment, because you're going to need to submit to us a couple of forms. The first form is the L564. This is the form where your employer will verify your insurance coverage, letting us know what the start date was and the expected end date of that coverage is. Also, the other form is the CMS Form 40B. This is the actual application where you're going to check the box. Yes, I want Part A. Yes, I want Part B. It is very important that you get both of those forms back to Social Security together. I tell people they are married. They are like peas and carrots, peanut butter and jelly. They got to stick together. If you send one back without the other, we cannot do anything until we get both of those forms. And at the point that we get both of those forms, that is the point that we would process your coverage. So please ensure sending both of those forms back to Social Security in a timely manner. This next scenario talks about that if a person is not working at age 65 and they've decided that they're not ready for that cash benefit from Social Security, they can file what we call as a Medicare only application. When a person files this application, then what will happen is that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services will send you a quarterly bill, and you'll pay your premiums directly to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Then at the point that you start your cash benefit from Social Security, at that point, we would start to deduct those premiums from your Social Security benefit. If you find that you can't pay 3 months worth of premiums at one time, one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is to go to the CMS website or Medicare.gov and create yourself a My Medicare account. This allows you to pay your premiums online directly to Medicare. Also, you're going to be able to see your information there, and you're going to be able to kind of verify that your premiums are current and up to date. If you don't want to do it that way, they have an option called Medicare Easy Pay, where you're going to complete a form and give them information from a checking or a savings account, and then they will debit that account on a monthly basis for you. So you do have a couple of options with regards to paying that Medicare premium, especially if you have not elected to receive a cash benefit from Social Security. Here on the screen is just a reminder about those two forms, that L564 and the 40B. Again, I want to stress, get them both to Social Security together when you're trying to enroll in Medicare. Now, I mentioned earlier that if you are a higher wage earner, then in addition to the base premium, you could have to pay an additional surcharge for Part B and for Part D, and that's going to be determined by your modified adjusted gross income. We look at that from your tax return from 2 years in the past. So this year is 2022. We look at your tax return from 2020. Going into 2023, we would look at your tax return from 2021 to determine if you need to pay that additional surcharge. And normally you're going to know before the end of the year, because you're going to get a letter from us somewhere between now and by the end of the year, letting you know what that new Medicare premium would be for you. On the screen here, just a couple of little things before we wrap up. Is just, again, I want to reference the Medicare.gov a website. So if you needed additional information with regards to Medicare, this is going to be a good starting point for you to figure out, like I said, what the costs are associated with Medicare, what does it cover, what is the drug plan or Part D, and then also providing additional information about the Medigap or that supplemental policy here. If you do create your My Medicare account, some of the things that you would be able to see behind the scenes, such as number one, you'd be able to see what claims were filed on Medicare for you. You'd see what's been paid, what is outstanding. Of course, you're going to make sure that your premiums are current and up to date. And also they have an option so that if you needed to ask a question, there is a link to their customer service where someone would respond to you electronically. And of course, if you haven't already seen one, here on the screen is going to be that Medicare card with you for you. It'll have your name, your Medicare number, which is now a series of letters and numbers, and of course, what coverage you are enrolled in, whether it is Part A, Part B, and the effective or the start date of that coverage for you. And I'm going to stop here for a moment, and that way I'm going to open up the chat to see what questions I have here. Let's see. Okay, someone is asking, if my spouse is not currently on my insurance, can I add him when we retire, or does he have to already be on it for a certain amount of time? If you're talking about through the school system, what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to refer you back to speak with someone with the HR in your school system or that school district, because I do not want to tell you wrong with regards to what they would have you to do, because a lot of places do require a certain amount of time, and that may vary from employer to the employer. So your best bet would be to speak with someone in HR to find out how soon do you need to get him on your coverage, especially if there is a possibility. I don't know if they'll let you bring a spouse over into retirement. And again, that's going to be something that you're going to have to check with that school system to make sure that you can do that. Are there?
Anise, I put the link to the state health benefits page for retirees in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. And let's see, someone else is asking, does divorced spouse benefits affect the benefit amount received by the spouse who actually earned the benefit? No. So if the primary number holder is receiving a benefit, if they have a current spouse, and say if they have a former spouse, their potential benefit comes from what we like to call, kind of making this simple, is a side pot of money that is set aside for any potential other beneficiaries, such as children, a current spouse, or a former spouse. And there's a calculation that we determine how much money goes to be set aside for those other individuals, and then we look to see who's potentially eligible for it. But it does not affect what the primary number holder would receive. Any other questions for me?
There's one that just got put in the chat. What do I do if I forgot how to log in and have been a victim of fraud and have it closed?
Okay, let's see. Miss Rosemary, what I'm gonna say, number one, if you have a block on your My Social Security account, then more than likely you're gonna have to contact your local servicing office, because you may have to come into the office so we can see you face to face to take that block off. And that is a security feature to make sure that the correct person is trying to access your information. If you don't have a block, and just say you misplaced your password, your username, and your password, one of the things that you can do is, when you go to My Social Security page, now if you either have a login.gov or a ID.me account, that verifies your identity. Once you pass that hurdle, again, it takes you straight onto your My Social Security page. So you don't necessarily have to know it, because I think in 2021, our agency kind of changed the way that individuals log in. So if you ever get totally locked out, you're going to have to use either ID.me or login.gov going forward to go into your My Social Security account. And then I think I see one other question here.
Yep, one last question.
Okay, perfect. This person is saying, my husband receives Social Security now. Can I retire and get a spousal benefit, then wait to file for myself upon full retirement age? And Miss Dana, what I'm going to caution you and say is, because Miss Tony is getting ready to talk about the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset, there is a potential for you to be eligible to receive a benefit off of his record, but it may be subject to the government pension offset. And I'm not going to steal her thunder. And if it does, it may be highly unlikely that you would receive a benefit off of his record, because it's going to depend on how much is your pension from your employer who does not pay into Social Security. So if you're getting a pension from a school system who does not contribute into Social Security, then more than likely you would be subject to the government pension offset. But again, I'm not going to steal Miss Tony's thunder, because she's going to rock it for you all, and you're going to be amazed with what she tells you. And like always, ladies, thank you so much for having me here with you, and let me know whenever you need me. I'll be glad to show up for you.
Thank you, Anise. I appreciate all the information, and those of us in attendance, if your head is spinning, I said it might be. And so before Tony becomes the messenger on the GPO web, why don't we take about a 5-minute break if you haven't been taking one already, and we'll reconvene at 11:20 if that's okay with everyone. And Tony will be just the messenger. So see y'all in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Let's see, I'm having problems with my screen sharing. I've had this problem before. Karen, you're gonna have to share.
Okay, and let's go back out and try it one more time, Tony, and in the interim, I'll pull up my copy.
Okay. I had this problem before. I think I'm gonna have to update my Zoom or contact Zoom about why this is happening to me. It immediately pauses my screen share.
Well, that's
And
interesting.
I can't restart it. No, the same thing has happened. So in the interest of time, if you could go ahead and share.
I will do this because technology is our friend
Technology is our friend. Okay.
from the beginning. Okay.
All right. Remember that I am just the messenger. And for some of you, this is going to be kind of devastating, but it is the truth as it stands now. So let's review what Anise told us about Social Security. If you have 10 years of work paying into Social Security, you have earned 40 credits and are eligible for some Social Security benefits. But if you've worked less than 10 years, you have less than 40 credits, based on your work record, you will receive no Social Security benefits. So let's just review how to earn those credits. Currently, for every $1,510 you receive 1 credit, and you can receive a maximum of 4 credits per year. So that means that you have earnings that are covered, meaning that Social Security taxes were withdrawn from your paycheck. And we'll talk about how to check for that in a moment. But remember that you can be working in a system that does not deduct for Social Security. However, you could have a part-time job or previous employment where you earned that 10 years of credit paying into Social Security. But I've got some bad news for you. So let's go on to the next slide. GPO WEP is the monster that we're going to talk about now, the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. This is federal legislation that was passed more than 30 years ago. And there's a move afoot to do away with this, but we'll have to talk about that next. We're going to talk about WEP, the windfall elimination provision, first. If any part of your pension is based on work not covered by Social Security, you may be affected by the windfall elimination provision, which means you will have your Social Security benefits, your retirement and disability benefits reduced. If any part of your pension is based on work not covered by Social Security, you may be affected by this, even if you have other work that pays into Social Security. Currently, people from all 50 states are affected because you may have moved. And so teachers are not covered in 15 states. This is Alaska, California, Rhode Island, Ohio, Maine, Colorado, Connecticut, Kentucky, Missouri, Texas, Louisiana, Nevada, and Georgia also is a state that is impacted because in Georgia and Kentucky, some districts pay into Social Security, others do not. So we're going to talk about those of us who work in systems not covered by Social Security. This doesn't just impact educators, it impacts state, county, city, and special district employees in 26 states and federal employees who are in the CSRS retirement system in every state. In 3 states, Georgia, Kentucky, and Rhode Island, local municipalities, those are city and county governments, can decide if they want to opt out of Social Security. This can be especially confusing for workers because if a teacher wants to move into a neighboring school district from a district that pays into Social Security and they're going to move into one that does not, they might not be aware of how that's going to impact their retirement. Teachers in 15 states, police, firefighters, postal workers, air traffic controllers, federal government employees hired before 1983, and some state, county, local, and special district workers are penalized by GPO-WEP. Even a foreign person pension can reduce or eliminate Social Security benefits. So let's talk about the windfall elimination provision that was passed in 1983. How do I know if I'm affected by GPO-WEP? Look at your pay stub. I know you go online to look at this and look and see, or your W-2 form, and look and see whether Social Security taxes have been withheld. You'll see Social Security wages, and then you'll see an area for Social Security tax withheld. And if that's 0, then you're impacted. How many people are impacted by this? About 3% of Social Security beneficiaries and 1.9 million people nationally. That is not insignificant. 56,000 people in Georgia are impacted by WEP. And this reduces retirement and disability benefits by up to 50%. And it's actually going to feel like more after your Medicare premiums are withheld. So the more years you had substantial earnings from Social Security covered by work, the less pension provision, this provision cuts your benefits. So if you've got 30 years having paid into Social Security in another form of employment, the penalty is going to be much less than if you worked in a district that paid into Social Security for 5 years and then moved into one that didn't. So it's going to make a difference. The law does guarantee that the Social Security benefits of public sector employees cannot be cut by more than half of their pension amount. Now, I'm not saying that this means that your benefits cannot be cut by more than half. It means that the formula they use can't use more than half of your pension amount. So let's take a look at a short video that explains how the windfall elimination provision works.
What's the windfall elimination provision for Social Security?
The windfall elimination provision is a rule that reduces Social Security retirement benefits for people who also collect a pension from what's called non-covered employment. Those are jobs in which people do not pay Social Security taxes.
You mean a job in which the employer doesn't withhold FICA taxes?
That's right. Today, most workplaces participate in Social Security, but some state and local government agencies do not. If you have a non-covered pension, but have also worked at least 10 years in jobs for which you paid Social Security taxes, so that you also qualify for Social Security benefits, the windfall elimination provision kicks in. It can reduce your monthly Social Security payment by up to half the amount of your pension. but it never reduces your benefit to zero. The more covered work you did, that is, the longer you'll pay Social Security taxes, the less the windfall elimination provision cuts into your benefits. To learn more, go to aarp.org/Social Security.
Okay, so let me check for understanding about the windfall elimination provision. First of all, I want to make sure you understand that we're talking about people who in some form of employment paid into Social Security at least 10 years. We're talking about people who also worked in a job that did not pay into Social Security and who apply for Social Security and have those earned benefits reduced based on at least half of the value of their pension. So that's what the windfall elimination provision does. Now let's talk about the government pension offset, which impacts those spousal benefits that Ms. Norman talked about. This was passed in 1977. If you receive a pension from a government job in which you did not pay Social Security taxes, some or all of your Social Security spouse's widows or widowers' benefits may be offset due to the receipt of that pension. If you receive a pension from a federal, state, or local government based on work for which you didn't pay Social Security taxes, then Social Security will reduce your spouse's or widow's benefits, and it can severely impact recipients of Social Security survivor or spousal benefits if they themselves work for a state or government agency at any point in their career. Allow me to use myself as an example. I worked for the DeKalb County school system, which did not pay into Social Security, but my husband paid into Social Security all of his working life. And I paid into Social Security about 20 years. The impact on me is that using my pension as an offset, if my spouse predeceases me, I will receive no spousal benefits, none at all. The government pension offset, next slide, affects people who receive spousal or survivor benefits in addition to a non-covered pension. Spousal benefit can be as much as half of the worker's primary insurance amount. So let's take a look at what survivor benefits do. The widow or widower at full retirement age or older can receive 100% of the deceased worker's benefit amount. At age 60, full retirement age, 71 to 99% of the deceased worker's basic amount. The widow or widower with a disability, age 50 through 59, 71%, or at any age caring for a child under the age of 16. But GPO can severely impact this. GPO reduces the amount of your Social Security survivor benefits by 2/3 of the amount of your government pension. Remember, WEP, the formula was half of your pension. For GPO, it's 2/3 of your pension. If you receive a pension from a government job but did not pay Social Security taxes while you had that job, your widow or widow benefits will reduce by 2/3 of the amount of your government pension. And so let me give you an example. I'm going to show you a slide that has another example on it. Let's look at this example. Ann gets a $3,000 pension, and 2/3 of that is going to be $2,000. Go ahead, Karen. Go to that slide. Going to be $2,000. So Ann's survivor benefit, because Ann's spouse predeceased her, would be $2,200. But Social Security is going to subtract that $2,000 from her survivor benefits. So she will only receive $200 in survivor benefits. That means Anne probably will not be able to continue retirement with independence if she was depending on her spouse's benefits while her spouse was alive to pay the rent, buy groceries, pay utilities, and live with dignity and independence. This can make an extreme difference, especially for people who are depending on Social Security to supplement their pension, like ESPs. Let's just answer the next question. Is it possible that my dependent survivor benefit can be reduced to zero? Absolutely. It's called a total GPO offset. That's what I told you impacts me. I have a total GPO impact. How many people are impacted? 700,000 people nationally, 20,000 in Georgia. Most of these people who are impacted are women and low income, often ESPs. It reduces Social Security benefits, spousal or survivor benefits by 2/3 of your public pension value. And 9 out of 10 people lose their entire spousal benefit like me. Let's look at a short video that will explain how GPO WEP can impact you.
And I know I think from having done this video, they refer to TRS and they're referring to the Texas retirement system, but the information still applies to the TRS-GA, Teacher Retirement System of Georgia.
Meet Kim. Kim is an assistant principal at a middle school.
We can hear it, but we can't see the video.
Okay, let me go out just a minute and screen share again and see if that will correct this.
Okay.
Tony, I could see it.
TRS.
Yeah, I saw it too.
Okay, I'll back it up a second and thank you for the input and video take 2.
Thank you, I see it now.
Meet Kim. Kim is an assistant principal at a middle school. She's been a TRS member for 12 years. Before becoming an educator, Kim worked as a public librarian for 11 years. While working for the city, Kim paid into the Social Security system. Since she began working for her school district, Kim has not paid into Social Security. Like most Texas school districts, her district does not participate in Social Security. That means Kim is only eligible for Social Security benefits based on her previous employment with the city and through her spouse, who has paid into Social Security for his entire career. Kim is currently reading up on 2 Social Security provisions that could reduce or even eliminate her Social Security benefits. The Windfall Elimination Provision, also known as WEP or WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. Because Kim will receive a TRS pension for employment in which she did not pay Social Security taxes, the Social Security benefits she earned from her previous employment could be reduced by the WEP but not totally eliminated. The amount of the reduction depends on the amount of her earnings and the number of years she paid Social Security taxes. The GPO, however, could offset or even eliminate Kim's spousal benefits if she retires from her current employer. The GPO will reduce her spousal Social Security benefits by 2/3 of her TRS pension. If 2/3 of Kim's TRS pension exceeds the amount of her spousal benefits from Social Security, she will not receive a spouse or widow's Social Security benefit. If you or your spouse has paid into the Social Security system, contact a Social Security representative to determine if the WEP or GPO apply to you. Ask if there are any exceptions to the GPO that could eliminate the offset to your spousal benefits. Be prepared to balance out the potential effects of these provisions with personal savings when you retire.
Okay, so again, allow me to use myself as an example. I paid into Social Security enough years that I am eligible for a benefit of a little under $1,100. But because of WEP, my benefit is reduced to a point that after my Medicare premium is paid, I receive $157 from Social Security. And I have a total GPO offset, which means that I will not receive any spousal benefits. This is unfair. It's absolutely unfair. That's my money. That's my husband's money. But there is an effort to repeal GPO and WEP and instill some fairness into the Social Security system. You can change GPO WEP. The first thing you need to do is to learn about it. This is an information session, but the Social Security .gov, SSA.gov, has some flyers, and you don't have to go into SSA.gov to get these flyers. You just need to Google GPO WEP to get these flyers that fully explain GPO WEP in government language. They will tell you what we've told you here, that your pension your Social Security benefits that you've earned and paid into can be severely reduced, and your spousal benefits can be reduced or totally eliminated by GPO WEP. Now, what is GAE doing about this? We care. First of all, let me tell you that GAE has devoted a lot of content in the No magazine to GPO WEP. If you look in the, I couldn't make out what issue this is, but when you Google No magazine or go into the GAE website and go to the No magazine, you click under Issues in Action. Yes, Issues in Action. It'll be Legislative Action Center and No magazine. You click on that and find the back issues. Find this one, and you will see that we devoted the entire center section and this one, we devoted the entire center section to facts about the windfall elimination provision and facts about the government pension offset. And if you're not in the habit of reading your No magazine, get in the habit of reading your No magazine, because this critical information is just some of the critical information to share with you each quarter. Now, I want you to know that GAE Retired has been at the forefront of advocating against for the repeal of GPO WEP, and our legislative chair, Linda Wolf Smith, made sure that every member of the Georgia congressional delegation received a copy of this No magazine and a letter from me that explained the need for them to co-sponsor legislation that we'll talk about in just a moment to repeal GPO WEP. What is NEA doing about it? If you search GPO WEP on the NEA.org website, you will find information about NEA's efforts to repeal GPO WEP, how to talk to your representative and how to talk to our senators about ending the unfair taxes on retired workers. And you'll see how to support the Social Security Fairness Act. And we're going to talk about that legislation in just a moment. You'll also see on Facebook a national WEP and GPO repeal movement. GAE Retired has partnered with the National Alliance for Retired Workers to work with other states to work toward the repeal of GPO WEP. And you should know that GAE sent 2 GAE Retired members to the national rally in Washington, D.C. To lobby for the repeal of GPO WEP, and they held a rally and had speakers. You need to know that you can lobby by, next slide, by writing, calling, emailing, going to their offices, your Congress representatives in Congress and our senators when they have town hall meetings.
Honorable representatives, please help. Retired public servants, including educators, law enforcement, firefighters, and foreign, municipal, state, and federal pensioners respectfully submit a plea to you.
Oh, okay.
Honorable
Sorry,
representative.
sorry, Tony.
Decades. So we call on our elected
Okay,
officials.
hold on a second. Stop share, go back.
Okay. You need to know that Representative Rodney Davis, who is a Republican, introduced legislation, the Social Security Fairness Act of 2021, House Resolution 82. And that calls for the repeal of the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. You will see that there are 305 co-sponsors for this legislation, more beyond the threshold for this piece of legislation to come to the floor of the House of Representatives for a vote. Our Georgia representatives who have co-sponsored this legislation are listed here. You will see that there is bipartisan support from our Georgia delegation and from the House of Representatives for this piece of legislation. But take a look at these names and see if your representative is listed here. And if not, you know what you have to do. It's time to call, email, write a snail mail letter, go to a town hall meeting, visit their office, talk to their staff about this onerous legislation and why it needs to be repealed. You can see them listed here: Hank Johnson, Nikema Williams, Sanford Bishop, Jody Heiss, Austin Scott, David Scott, Lucy McBath, and Rick Allen have all signed on to co-sponsor House Resolution 82. Also, delegation from GAE and GAE Retired met with Senator Warnock's aide to discuss this legislation. They also met with Senator, our representatives met in Washington with Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff's offices and discussed the need for the repeal of GPO-WIP based on the impact it is having on our members. Also, GAE Retired wrote a new business item that was submitted by the GAE Board of Directors to submit to the NEARA this summer, that NEA create a lobbying cadre of one active member and one retired member from each impacted state, recommended by the state president, solely focused on the repeal of the government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision. This was adopted. The money, the $300,000 that was the cost impact, was approved by the NEA Board of Directors. The state presidents have named their representatives to the lobbying cadre, and you will hear more from us, from GAE and GAE Retired, about this lobbying cadre as we move forward. They will actually be boots on the ground lobbying in Washington, DC to move toward the repeal of GPO-WIP. House Resolution 82 did get as far as a discharge petition, which meant it was brought out of committee and is supposed to be brought to the floor for consideration without a report from the committee, but it's up to the Speaker of the House to put it up for a vote. So that's someone else we need to be contacting, Nancy Pelosi. All right, so I have given you a lot of news that is not necessarily good for some of you. Do you have any questions?
And Tony, your contact information also will be shared with all participants so that people can go through and ask you individually.
Yes, absolutely. So contact me. I'll put it in the chat too.
Right. And again, Tony is just the messenger. And if this doesn't affect you directly, I think it affects you indirectly. Just we all should be able to live with dignity in retirement, especially if we've gone through and met the criteria for receiving full Social Security benefits. And we shouldn't be a victim of WEP or GPO. So let you digest that, and we'll move on to our penultimate topic for today is TRS. And yes, Rosemary, when I mail out information to attendees from this seminar, you will have the link to this video so you can go and play it back. And Tony and I are available to talk to almost anybody about GPO WEP and why it should be repealed. Mike Zorum from TRS is going to go through, and the happy news is we want to end on a happier point here. Hopefully you will get TRS benefits, and Mike will share information about those. So Mike, here's hoping your screen share works.
Okay, I'm gonna hit screen share, and let's see here.
And I see a PowerPoint.
You see the, okay, so and you hear me fine?
I do. And I don't know if you want to set it up for slideshow mode or not, but I do see the PowerPoint.
I wouldn't know how to change your view, but you're seeing it large enough?
I think so. If you go up to the top of where the orange is, and hit slideshow.
Over.
That? Well,
It's next to animations. It's in the orange.
You see where it says home, insert, draw, design, transitions. Keep going.
oh, it's in,
Keep going.
Go
Go
to
to
oh, it's right
slideshow.
there.
Click
Yep.
that, and then from beginning.
which is over on the left side.
Okay, did it change anything?
Double click it again because we're so close. Come on, change. And if it doesn't, we'll just go with what we have. You're in the right
Well,
spot.
all right.
Oh, and Rosemary is saying you have to do the slideshow before sharing. We'll go with this. Is there?
All right. Well, we're today going to look at the retirement plan options, what you can pick when you're real close to making your final decisions about TRS. We'll review creditable service. The more of this service you have, the larger your benefit's going to be. It's part of the formula. And then we're going to, in the end of this section, talk about beneficiaries, primary and secondary, and the importance of having them. So you know better than anyone else just how challenging it is to be a teacher these days, and you, for many reasons, deserve a great retirement benefit. And you know, it's not just TRS, because you know you can also qualify to carry your state health benefit plan insurance into retirement. So it's a wonderful benefit package. In terms of TRS, conceptually, it's important to understand that what you get from us is not a function of how much money you put in, nor is it a function of the ups and downs of the stock market. It's solely a function of how long you've worked under TRS and then your high average salary. You know, the longer you work, the higher your salary, the more you're going to get from TRS. And it's guaranteed for life. It can't be taken away from you. If you take a plan that leaves money, should you pass away first, to survivors, those survivors have benefits for the rest of their lives with cost of living adjustments. We have over 9,000 retirees who are at least 85 years old, over 3,000 that are over 90, and then we have about 70 retirees that are over age 100. So it's not uncommon to be collecting 30 plus years in retirement. There are a lot of different directions you can go with your retirement plan. We'll look at each of those options. They leave varying amounts to you and one or more beneficiaries. You get cost of living adjustments during retirement, which we'll touch on. You have to decide whether or not you want what's called a partial lump sum option. We'll cover that. But in the final analysis, if your goal in retirement is to maintain your standard of living, the experts say that, painting with a broad brushstroke, you need to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. So when you take TRS, your 403B or 457 plan, plus Social Security, to the extent you're getting it, you'd want to at least cross that 80% threshold. And that's just a starting point to begin the conversation. Depending on your goals in retirement, you may need more than an 80% replacement ratio. So what you can see here is that the vast majority of us retiring will need more than just what TRS provides. Here is the formula that we use to compute your benefits. We take your years of creditable service, and that means your day-to-day membership service, your unused sick leave credit, and a category called service purchases. And we'll look at each of those in more depth later, but we add them all together in one bucket and we take that amount, and it can be partial years. We take that and multiply it by 2%. So let's say you had 30 years of service, you multiply it by 2%, that would be 60% of your high average salary. And your high average salary is the highest consecutive 24 months of pay averaged together. It doesn't have to be your last 24. Often it is, but it can be anywhere from your career. It doesn't have to start and end with the school year. Just it's a rolling average of the highest 24 months wherever they are. And when you multiply that all together, that's your monthly benefit under TRS and the maximum plan. That's the most you can get from TRS. All the other options that we'll discuss will be some kind of actuarial reduction from whatever your maximum benefit is.
And Mike, I
Now,
need you to take your cursor and place it on each slide that's on the left-hand side, because we're not seeing the slides you're talking about. So if you can just move your cursor down on the left.
move my cursor down on the left.
Right.
That's not
right
making
now,
sense.
Well, right now, okay, now you're on number 9 and it says eligibility for normal retirement. And now you're on number 8, which shows the formula.
Well, I'll switch from this location then, because I can see it too. We talked about that. All right, so you now see the benefit formula?
Indeed. Thank
All right.
you.
It just never is smooth, is it?
No. So
I
every
just-
time you
there's so
talk
many-
about a different slide, just put your cursor on that slide and we should be able to see what you're talking about.
So here's the formula. And we talked about the maximum plan and that all your other benefits, other options will be a reduction from your maximum. Some nice things start happening when you get a check from us, in that certain deductions you're used to seeing don't come out of your TRS check. One of those is TRS doesn't come out of your TRS check. So that's 6% savings right off the bat. Then there's no payroll taxes. So there's no Social Security if you were having that taken out. There's no old age survivor. There's no Medicare component coming out. And that total can be over 7.5% won't come out of your check. There's no 403B or 457 deduction. And when you're age 62, retired and living in Georgia, there's a state tax exemption of $35,000 that you don't have to pay. And then once you're 65, retired and living in Georgia, that exemption jumps up to $65,000. So the vast majority of our retirees age 65 and older don't pay any state tax on their TRS. There is, however, one deduction which I think you'd like to see, and that is for the state health benefit plan. You know, as long as you're carrying that coverage in retirement or prior to retirement, you'll default into that coverage in retirement, and it'll be deducted from your TRS check. Okay, and then when you're retired, you no longer have open enrollments, but they do offer you a retiree option change period where you can go from one option into the next. All right. Let's see. Are we now seeing eligibility for normal retirement?
We are.
Yay. Okay, at 30 years of service at any age, you could begin collecting. Or maybe you started your career late and you end up turning 60 with 10 or more years of service. That would be the other minimum threshold to start collecting. Now, obviously, because of the formula, you know, if you work 30 years, you're going to have a larger benefit than if you work 10. But in either case, you would be eligible to start collecting if you became disabled and couldn't do your job as determined by the TRS medical board. You could take a retirement with 10 years at any age without any kind of penalty. Now, you can take an early retirement, but there is, as you might expect, a penalty. This would be for people who have between 25 and 30 years of service, but of course they're under age 60, because remember, if you're 60 or older, all you need is 10. But if you're not yet 60 and you don't have 30 years, but you have at least 25, for that group of folks, if you wanted to get out and start collecting right away, you could. But for every year you're under 30 years of service or under age 60, there's a 7% reduction from whatever your normal benefit would have been. So if you only have 25 years in, your normal benefit would have been 50. So you're only going to get a percentage of the 50% benefit. If you do take an early out, you will not get a cost of living adjustment until you reach age 60 or 30 years of service. You know, would have reached 30 years based on what you had at the time you quit. All right. Here are the different retirement plans you have to choose from. On the left, you see the two plans that do not leave a monthly benefit at your death, but they provide the largest benefit for you while you're living. And those plans might be great for someone who has no one who depends on them financially. So if you pass away, no one's going to have a financial hardship. And then we have, on the other hand, options 2 through 4, which leave varying amounts of money to one or more beneficiaries. And we're going to go over how each of them work. But the easiest thing I think to do right up front is to break the plans up into those that don't leave a benefit to survivors, but maximize your benefits. And then those where if you know you're going to leave a monthly benefit to one or more survivors, then you'd only be looking at options 2 through 4. And then the next slide, before we get into the specifics of each option, is conceptual in that in your TRS account, there are two buckets of money. There's what I'll call your bucket of money, and that's where your contributions and interests go. The money that came out of your check plus the interest we paid you. That's the bucket from which we pay your very first benefit checks until that bucket runs out. It takes about 2 or 3 years for that money to run out. And then once your bucket of money runs out, we start paying you or a beneficiary from the TRS bucket, that other bucket of money, which never runs out. That bucket runneth over. So that has some importance as we discuss how the options work, and also as it relates to beneficiary issues. We at TRS never keep any of the money that went into your bucket. Any of the money that came out of your check plus the interest will always go back to you in the form of your benefit or to a beneficiary. All right, Plan A maximum and Plan B option 1. Remember, these do not leave any survivor benefits. We already saw the formula which determines your maximum benefit. So I don't think we need to discuss that anymore. If you do pass away before the money in your bucket's used up and you took the maximum plan, what's ever remaining in your bucket goes in a lump sum to your designated beneficiary. Now with Plan B option 1, we kind of twist things up in terms of how we use the buckets to pay your benefit. If you take Plan B option 1, your very first benefit checks come out of both buckets of money, the TRS bucket and your bucket. So consequently, your bucket of money lasts longer. Instead of that 2 to 3 years under the maximum plan, under option 1, your bucket of money lasts 10 to 14 years. And the advantage to you for that is that if you were to pass away anytime before that 10 to 14 year window, there'd still be money left in your bucket to leave in a lump sum. Whereas in the maximum plan, that money would have been exhausted years earlier. And to take Plan B option 1, usually I see maybe a 1% or so reduction from whatever your maximum is, but it's going to be different for everyone. So I'm just giving you kind of a ballpark notion of what kind of reduction you'd have from whatever your maximum benefit was. Now here's another conceptual slide before we go to options 2 through 4. And the way they work is really like a ride on a teeter-totter, in that the more you want to leave to other people, the less you're going to get. And the more you want for yourself, the less other people are going to get. And you just decide where in this teeter-totter ride you want to get off. It's not right or wrong to go anywhere you feel is appropriate. But what most folks will do is pick a plan that matches their family needs and retirement goals the best. Okay. So if we go to option 2, you can see here that whatever you were getting at the time you pass away is the starting benefit for your beneficiary. So let's say at retirement, you took option 2, and years later, when you pass away, you're getting $4,000 a month from us. Well, then your designated beneficiary would get that same $4,000 a month for their life with cost of living adjustments. You know, as long as there's inflation, they'll get 1.5% twice a year, just like you will. So that's a very rich benefit for beneficiaries. So consequently, you take a larger reduction while you're both living. I would say, just if you want a ballpark idea, it's 10 to 25% less than your maximum. And then we have option 3, where your beneficiary gets 1/2 of your benefit at the time you pass away. So in our example of $4,000, if you had taken option 3 at retirement, they're going to get $2,000 a month. And that may be enough for them. And if so, the benefit to you is that while you're both living, option 3 costs you less. It's about a 5 to 15% reduction from whatever your maximum benefit was. Okay, moving on to the next options. These are the pop-up versions of option 2 and 3. They work the same as the respective options 2 and 3 with a couple exceptions. And one of them is that under these pop-ups, you can only have one primary beneficiary. Under all the other options we talked about today and we'll talk about, you can have as many beneficiaries as you want. But if you take a pop-up, you can only have the one. And if that sole primary beneficiary dies first, then your benefit as a retiree pops up to whatever your maximum benefit would be. And what I normally see is maybe a $300 or a $400 pop-up per month. So consider that if it makes sense for you or your family. You may have a situation where your beneficiary is working while you're retired and earning income, and you want to preserve some or all of that monthly income by taking a pop-up should that person die first. Maybe the pop-up makes sense for you. All right. And then last but not least, let me slide up here. We have option 4. And this is where you can customize what goes to you and what ends up going to your beneficiary. So you can really fine tune that teeter-totter ride we talked about earlier. You could, for example, leave 75% of your benefit to a beneficiary, or 33%, 1/3 or 75 instead of the 100 or the 50% under options 2 and 3. You also can leave a fixed dollar amount, like $1,000 a month or 500, and then that would grow with COLAs as well. All right. Of course, the more you leave them, the less you would get based on our teeter-totter concept. All right. So now we're going to, since you're all now experts on TRS options, we're going to play a little quiz here. If we're in person, it's normally interactive, but I'll just lead the discussion on the answers. So in these 3 scenarios, they're simplified, but it kind of walks you through a decision-making process that you may want to use when contemplating what option is best for you. So in scenario 1, we have Mary, who has no dependents, and no one depends on Mary's income. So if you were Mary, what option might you reasonably select? Well, the thought here was that Mary would take the maximum plan. Why not reap the benefits of all those years of working? Because no one's going to have a financial hardship if Mary passes away first and the TRS pension stops. In scenario 2, we have Sue, who has a spouse, and that spouse has no savings, won't be getting a pension or Social Security, and despite all his efforts at winning the lotto, he has yet to do so. And for discussion purposes, we have to assume, or we will assume, that Sue very much loves her spouse. So Sue wants to protect her spouse against financial calamity. If she were to die first, he'd have nothing. So what option might loving Sue have in this scenario? And the thought here is that Sue would take the richest plan available for beneficiaries, and that's option 2. And that would provide as much protection as she can for that spouse who would otherwise not be getting any income. And then lastly, we have Tom, who also has a spouse, but this spouse will be receiving a pension and Social Security. But when they run the numbers, the surviving spouse would still be $500 a month short of making ends meet if Tom dies first. So if you were Tom, what option might you select? And the idea here is that Tom would take option 4, and he would specify a fixed dollar amount of $500 to go to the spouse. That way, if Tom did die first, she'd continue to get that $500 a month on top of her other income so that she can meet her needs. So there, in a nutshell, is a thought process you can use when you're trying to decide what option is best for you. If you're having any real anxiety with making this decision, you may want to talk to a licensed financial advisor. And if you're in a 403B or 457 with your school system, that might be the first place to go, is to that rep who can help give you with that decision and give you specific advice. No one at TRS is licensed or insured to give you specific financial advice. So you need to go to those people who are properly licensed. We can talk, in generalities like we are today, but if you really want some guidance, that's might be where you want to start. All right. Now, once you've decided on the option you want, the next step would be deciding whether or not you want this partial lump sum option plan, or PLOP for short. About 1 in 10 of our retirees take it, and they take a cash distribution on average of $65,000 gross. And you can do anything you want with the money. You could pay off high interest credit card debt, which may make sense. Again, another discussion may be in order with your licensed financial advisor. Some people use the money as a quasi form of life insurance. Obviously, you could get a depreciable asset, use it as seed money to get another business going. You could also roll it over and never touch it and put it into another kind of qualified retirement plan, like your 403B at work, or like an IRA at your local bank. And then you wouldn't pay taxes on that money until you took it out later. And you can take a PLOP distribution anywhere from 1 month of your maximum benefit all the way up to 3 years of your maximum benefit, with some rounding in there. All right. One of the most spectacular features of your TRS plan is that you get cost of living adjustments as long as there's inflation, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. And it's very rare that CPI isn't always going up. Once you are cycled into the COLAs, which takes 7 to 12 months, you get a 1.5% increase every January and every July. And it may not seem like a whole lot from one COLA to the next, but when you've been retired 13 years, based on these 3% increases annually, you're 50% higher than when you retired. And I bump into all kinds of retirees on the road who come to me smiling, and they say, Mike, now I'm making more from TRS than I did while I was working. And it's because of these annual cost of living adjustments. So let's walk through an actual example. And we do recommend you get one of these benefit estimates for yourself when you're 2 years out. You can get them early as 5 years out from planned retirement, but we do recommend you also get one at 2. They tend to be more accurate than ones that are 5 years out. Plus, at 2 years, there's still plenty of time to fix something if some number doesn't look right to you. We'll take your actual decisions on what option you want, get your direct deposit information, beneficiary documentation, all the little details when you're within 6 months of planned retirement. If you want your first check on time, we need 2 months prior to your retirement for you to get everything in. So optimally, you really have a 4-month window, 6 months out to 2 months out to go online and give us all your decisions, okay? So here we got a benefit calculation estimate example. This gentleman's gonna, or this member will retire June 1 of 2025. The high average salary is $5,833. And that, remember, is a rolling 24-month period. And this gentleman member worked 30 years times the 2%, or they're going to get 60% of that high average salary. And that comes out to a nice even $3,500 per month under the maximum plan. So now we're going to go look at the top half of the estimate. And yours will look the same in terms of, format, but obviously the names and numbers will be different. This top half shows where all the assumptions go in. Obviously, you have to give us the retirement date. And that'll always be the first of the month following your last day of actual employment. So if you're the typical classroom teacher, last day of work is in May, you become a June 1 retirement. And that's the date, that you would put in. The computer will automatically find your high 24 months and average it together. If you want to assume an annual increase from the time you are doing this estimate to the time you retire, you can input that or have us put it in. It'll show you the minimum and maximum plop amounts that you could take. The computer will download your current service level. In this case, it's 25 years and 6/9 of a year. And then it'll also project your day-to-day membership service from the time this is printed to the time you plan to retire, and give you total anticipated service at retirement after including your best guess on your unused sick leave and any other service that you might want to buy and haven't done so yet. So that brings up a very important concept, and that's getting your unused sick leave processed. With the exception of your last employer, you have to send all your prior employers an unused sick leave certification form. And you can mail it to them through the old-fashioned snail mail, or after filling out your part, you can email it as a writable PDF to the central office where you worked previously. So if you worked at 3 school systems before your last one, you'd have 3 forms to send out. You fill out a portion of it, the school system fills out the rest of it, they send it to TRS, and we add it all together to get your total unused. Now, with your last employer, prior to retirement, it's a little easier. All you have to do is indicate in the application that you want to use that unused sick leave, and we email them and they email us back the information. So I wish it were that easy for all former employers, but it's just the way this has ended up working out. So now we're going to look at the bottom half of the estimate. And this shows us what the member and primary beneficiary will get under all the different options. And you can see how, as you're moving from the maximum plan to the other options, you're getting a less monthly benefit. Under option 1, you'll see it only goes down about $10 to do the option 1, but then to leave the 100% benefit under option 2, the reduction is about $225. But if the member dies first, the primary beneficiary will get that same monthly benefit. And then you can see with the pop-up, there's another reduction of about $25 a month under pop-up option 2. But if the primary beneficiary dies first and you took pop-up option 2, the member's benefit's going to jump from the $3,250 a month to the $3,500. That's how the pop-up works. Same kind of mechanics with option 3. With option 4, we just threw in $500 as a courtesy to show you how much $500 would cost. It's sort of, for every 500, it's a reduction of about $35. And it's a linear function, so, you know, leaving $100 would be 1/5 of the reduction you see there. Again, we do recommend you get one of these when you're 2 years out, but you can get them up to 5 years out. And we are now doing counseling sessions where we're going to go over your specific estimate. And we're doing those in Atlanta in person or in Macon in person, or you can do these things virtually. WebEx or FaceTime or just an old-fashioned phone call. You do go online after you've registered your account to set up the date and time that you want and that is available. To set up your counseling session, you do need your TRS ID number if you haven't done this before. And if you don't know what your TRS ID number is, you can call our 800 number. And let me grab the member guide here. If you can see it, I'm not sure, but this is what it looks like. And you can download this from the TRS website, which is trsga.com, and go to the publications tab. And it's called the Members Guide. And the 800 number is 800-352-0650, and tell them you don't know what your ID number is, and then they'll mail it to you. So you do have to wait to get it. You can't, for security purposes, they don't give you that number over the phone. So if you're within that 5-year period of retiring, you can start thinking about what option is best for you. I think we've talked about the other points. Our office is off exit 252, which is near the Georgia Tech campus. And the one in Macon is right off I-75 north of the downtown area. So let's talk about creditable service. Remember, the more of this you have, the larger your benefit's going to be. And there are 3 sections that we're going to look at. And the first one is membership service. And we award credit in 1-month increments. And based on these old teacher contracts, we have a 9-month year. So every month you work, you get 1/9 of a year. Once you have 9 months worked, you don't get extra credit. So I know you're all 10, 11, or 12-month contracts, but once you have 9, you have 1.0 years. And our clock starts July 1 and goes through the end of June. That's our fiscal year, and that's how we start and end counting service credit. Now, if we have any, I'm not sure if we have any Board of Regents or University System of Georgia attendees in the audience, but if you're academic faculty, you have a 8-month year, and 1 month would be 1/8 of a year. All right. Sick leave. Most school systems award the most the law allows, which is 1 1/4 days per month per your contract type. So if you're the typical classroom teacher working 10 months, you accrue 12.5 days a year. Now, if you're a 12-month person, you can see here that you could accrue 15 days a year. And if you never use your sick leave, over a 30-year career, a 12-month person could accrue a good deal more of service credit through unused sick leave credit. So there are some advantages with TRS if you do have these longer contracts, in that you could have more sick leave credit. It's not going to be on your very first check. We don't process your sick leave until after you've retired, so that we avoid any inefficiencies. If you were to get sick just before you retired, you might go into a lower credit and a lower benefit. And to avoid having to redo everything, we simply process your sick leave right after you've retired. So you don't actually see sick leave until maybe your second, maybe your third check, but we do send you a separate retroactive check for making up anything that was missed. All right. Go to the next slide here. Sometimes sick leave records are missing, not as much as they used to be because more is computerized now. But if they are missing, we're going to compute an average number of days unused based on the records that are available. And then we'll apply that average to the period of time for which records are missing. So we've got recorded days, we've got estimated days. We add them together to get your total, and then we go to a chart. This is also, there's a more expanded version in that members guide that I showed you not long ago. I think it's page, well, it's towards the very back. So don't feel that you need to frantically write, copy this chart. But you do need 60 minimum days in order to get any credit. And that gets you 3 months. But remember, we have a 9-month year at TRS. So 60 days would be 3/9 of a year, or 1/3 added to your total, or 0.333 years would get added and thrown into the formula. If you had 170 to 189 days, that's 9 months, or 1.0 years is added. So you could work 29 years, have a year of sick, get up to 30 and retire immediately. Or you could keep working to 30 years and then get a 31-year benefit, or 62% of your pay under the maximum plan. There is no cap to unused sick leave credit. However, there is a cap in the formula of 40 total years. So when you add your time worked plus your unused sick leave plus any service purchases, you can't exceed more than 40. So you cap out at 80% of your pay. Not many people get that far along, but some certainly do, and some actually work longer than 40, but they're not getting a higher percentage of their salary. Okay, the next topic is service purchases. There's kinds of service you can buy, and we'll cover the main ones, but they're all listed in that members guide. Some of you out there might have already got a cost calculation. You can get them updated by simply making a phone call to us. You're never under any obligation to buy a service after we've costed it for you. You may want to see first how much it's going to cost, and then you can decide if that's right for you. I can tell you that in many cases, it is cost benefit favorable to you to buy the service. It might take 4, 5, 6 years to get your money back, but then for the rest of your life, you're going to enjoy that higher benefit. Probably the two most common are TRS withdrawn service and out of state. Withdrawn service is where you worked for a while and you quit. And when you quit, you withdrew your bucket of money. And then down the road, you decide you want to come back to TRS covered employment. Once you've been back at least 3 years, the law allows you to buy back the time you cashed out on. Simply give us the money we gave you plus interest. This one, I can tell you, has a very favorable cost benefit ratio. It does not take long to get your money back. So if you have any of that, seriously consider purchasing it back. And the longer you wait to buy any of this, the more expensive it becomes because of assessing interest, which right now is at 7.5% a year. Another common one is out-of-state service, where you taught at an out-of-state public school, college, university. You can, as long as you're not getting a pension from that other state, you can buy up to 10 years and add it to Georgia. And it may make a lot of sense. Let's say you have a year in Florida or a year in Wyoming. You're not going to get any pension money from that time served. So why not convert it to Georgia time and get more pension money for it? Other forms of service purchase include state time. If you were a Georgia state employee, like with the Department of Education, you can also buy military time if you were active duty during a period of national emergency, which we basically have been in continuously since the 70s up to now. There's also private school in Georgia, but it's very, very expensive. There's also something called airtime. You have to do that in conjunction with a retirement. And you can buy up to 3 years of time just because you want to get out sooner. But if it was that simple, a lot more people would be doing it. The catch, if you want to call it that, is it's extraordinarily expensive. For every year of airtime you want to buy, the cost is in the neighborhood of 1 year of your TRS benefit. So if you're going to get $40,000 a year from us, 1 year of airtime is in the neighborhood of $40,000. We don't cost it that way, but it just ends up working along those guidelines. If you want to learn more about any of these service purchases, there's a write-up on each form in the member's guide. If you do buy service, it's just like time worked in your TRS job. So you could retire earlier. Some people might buy time to avoid the early retirement penalty. But remember, the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. And don't think you can execute these things a month before you retire, because some of these things, especially out-of-state service, might take a year or two to process, typically because you end up having to wait quite a while for that out-of-state entity to complete the paperwork. So do get the ball rolling if you're interested in any of those. Okay, we're coming to towards the end here. Remember to get your sick leave certification forms from other employers, other than your last one. Okay, I think we covered those other points. Okay, our last main topic of the show is beneficiary issues. We'll look at primary versus secondary. What happens if you die while you're actively working? What if you die or get divorced in retirement and have survivors? How does it all work? So you should designate both primary and secondary beneficiaries. Primaries are the one who get the monthly benefit for life. Secondaries do not. Some people think, when the primaries pass, well, then we start paying the secondaries. No, it doesn't work that way. Now, there is one rare exception when a secondary becomes a primary, but it's very rare. You do want to have a secondary, because if you and the primary are both deceased, when there's still money left in your TRS contribution account in your bucket of money, what's ever in your bucket of money would then go in a lump sum to your secondary beneficiary. So that's why it's important to list at least one of each. Okay. What if you die in active service? That means while you're working as a teacher, or we do have a group of people who quit and they're waiting to turn age 60 and have their pension start. And for a 4-year period after you quit and you're waiting to turn age 60, TRS still considers you an active TRS member. So if you pass away in that 4-year period, or while you're working, but you're not vested, you don't have 10 years yet, all we can do is refund the money that's in your contribution account. I think most everyone today listening has 10 or more years. And in that case, there is some protection for your beneficiaries with the death in active service, because the primary could opt for option 2 retirement, which is the very rich one, or they could take the money in your account in a lump sum, one or the other. In a normal life expectancy, they're going to get far more from the annual pension, but under the law, we have to offer them, you know, each of these as a choice. Now, in the rare event where there's no surviving primary beneficiary, then the secondary becomes the primary and has the same choice of either option 2 or the money in your account. When might that happen? Well, probably most frequently in car accidents, where you and your spouse, who's your beneficiary, both die in a car accident. Then we would go to whomever you designated as the secondary, and we would give them the same choice the primary would have had. And that kind of system only works in death in active service. Doesn't work that way when you've retired. There is no promoting of a secondary to a primary. So I'm not going to go over all the nuances here, but just more or less summarize in that when you make your election and start getting checks, you can't voluntarily make changes to the option you selected or to your beneficiaries. The only time you can make selected changes is when there's a death or divorce. And then even then, you can't simply do anything you want. It's governed by, what you can do is governed by law. So make sure you're comfortable with the decision you make, because you can't call us back later and say, oh, you know, I made a mistake, I'm changing my mind. You have entered a legally binding contract, which you know, cannot be changed. Oops, I don't know if that. This just shows you that the choices for changes are even more restrictive if you have multiple primary beneficiaries. One thing I should point out that's kind of counterintuitive, if you have, say, 3 kids and they're each getting a third, you retire and then one of those 3 kids predecease you, you might think that the remaining 2 children will then split the benefit in half. You know, instead of 1/3 going to each, 1/2 would go to each. But there is no pop-up for these beneficiaries. They stay at the 1/3, and the other third is simply absorbed by the plan. We have to pay the people designated on file with us. Things like wills, divorce decrees, remarriages have no bearing on who we pay. Who we pay is not subject to a probate process. It's contractual law. So if you get divorced and you remarry and want to update your beneficiary to the new spouse, don't forget to do it, because if you fail to do so and you pass away, we have to pay the original spouse with whom you divorced. And that happens every year. So keep your beneficiaries up to date. It's okay to designate a minor child. You just need to obtain a court-appointed legal guardian, and we'll pay the child through that guardian until they become an adult. You can have as many beneficiaries as you want, and you can divvy it up any way you want, as long as when you add it up, it equals 100%. We can't pay a monthly benefit to the estate of so-and-so. It has to be a named individual. We can pay in a lump sum monies to an estate. So like if you took the maximum plan or Plan B option 1, you could designate like the Humane Society or the estate of so-and-so. But if you're going to be leaving a monthly benefit like options 2 through 4, you would name them directly. Okay, just a couple more slides. Here's our website. Your very first payments are direct deposited. Your very first direct deposit will be around the middle of the month in which you retire. And then all subsequent direct deposits will be the first business day of the month for that month. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we can do the Q&A.
I think you have about 3 questions unanswered in the chat. Would you like me to read them to you?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
One person says, if you have less than 60 days of accrued sick leave, you get nothing, right? No cash benefit. So
Not
use it
from-
or lose it.
Yeah, at least from the TRS standpoint, anything less than 60 days, some people just use up their sick days by, calling off, but I'm not saying do that. But your county may have something available. They may pay you a certain monetary amount for each day that you cash out, if they have that. But it takes a minimum of 60 to get any extra credit from us.
Gotcha. Another person says, I worked in Florida for 2 years. I came back to Georgia. How will that impact my retirement?
Well, 2 years you're not vested in Florida, I'm assuming, and you're not going to be getting any pension from Florida. So once you have a total of 6 years of Georgia, you can, if you want, buy one of those 2 years of Florida, and then when you complete a 7th year, you can pick up that second year you have of Florida. If you already have more than 7 Georgia years, you could buy them both at the same time. I'm assuming too, that when you left to go to Florida, did you pull your money out or leave it with TRS? If you pulled that money out, you're going to have to buy that Georgia time back as well. That's called withdrawn service. And you have to be back 3 years before you can buy your withdrawn Georgia. If we assume that you left your money with us, then you don't have to go through that process. But you then can look at buying the 2 years of Florida. And the longer you wait to do it, remember, the more it's going to cost. So I always recommend that as soon as you're able, as soon as you're eligible, you pull those years back into Georgia.
And Mike, I'm going to take one last question here. There's no way to give extra to TRS in anticipation of, for example, windfall elimination provision. And the person continues, the solution must come from either working longer or more money from investment income. Then I'm curious, I'm curious if there is any option available to a teacher where the state will also grow one second investment bucket beyond the capital invested by the individual. And thank you.
No, we won't take any extra money. And remember, conceptually, that what you get from us has nothing to do with how much money you give us, right? It's based on the formula, how long you've worked and your salary. Having said that, what I always tell teachers is, if you have extra money to contribute towards your retirement, then put it into your 403B, all right? So take that extra money. If you haven't opened up a 403B, do it through your central office, and it's never too late. I know you're probably close to retirement, but you can always use that money later. So open up a 403B or put more of the money into the 403B if you find yourself having some extra money that you can put towards your retirement. Certainly one solution is to work longer, because remember, the longer, two things happen. The longer you work, the more you're going to get from us. You know, it's 2% for every additional year you work. And the other thing a lot of teachers don't intuitively think of is that if you work one more year, in that incremental year, you're getting your full salary, right? 100% of your pay, not the pension amount. So you're getting a much larger chunk of pay, plus you're getting 2% more of your high average salary when you ultimately retire. So yeah, a marvelous way to get that extra income is simply to work longer. And then obviously, you know, money through investments, if you know, that's going to be subject to the ups and downs of the stock market and the choices you made. I'm curious, they're wondering if their grow one second invest beyond the capital invested by the individual. Well, no, there's no other state supported retirement instrument. It's, you know, it's TRS, Social Security, and your 403B. Now, having said that, there are a few counties, like Gwinnett County, for example, they have a mini TRS, a Gwinnett retirement system, but they don't have Social Security. And then there are some other counties where they don't contribute to Social Security, but they might put 3 or 4% of your pay into a separate 403B. Like I think DeKalb County does that. But
Okay.
that's, but you're giving up Social Security to get that contribution, but there is no second place to put money where you're going to get additional state funds.
Mike, I want to, in the interest of time, thank you again for always being here and coming to
Sure.
these. And for people who are participating, again, you'll get contact information. So if you did not get your questions answered today, we'll go through and reach out to people. And as we close out, I have just some announcements, just putting some things on your radar. We do about 4 of these pre-retirement seminars a year. So the next one won't be until after the holiday season ends and it gets a little warmer outside again. And again, these do last the morning. Thank you for sticking with us. And they are open to members and non-members who are within 5 years of retirement. So I'll be asking you if you want to come again to another one, please come early and often. And I will be sending out the link and contact information and handouts from the various presenters today. Just an FYI, if you're interested in political action within Georgia and you're a GAE member and you have given money to the Fund for Public Education, you can be on the FPE Board of Directors. And so, and you can find out through GAE, or you can email me what district you live in. But it's a great way to be politically active and help GAE make some decisions about directions to go concerning political issues. Every first Wednesday of the month, the GAE Retired Organization has the lunch bunch. You'll notice here in yellow, it's open to all GAE members. We have a hard start, a hard stop, 1 hour. And you can see in December, we'll be talking about dementia and the alter ego, the alter program. So please join us on your relaxing lunch hour. I'm being sarcastic, don't shoot me, but join in if you can. And again, these are on the recorded and on the GAE Retired YouTube channel. We're going to be politically active, and again, tune in if you can. We're going to do a virtual state capitol tour on December 14th and talk about the 2023 General Assembly, just to get oriented with what's happening, especially since new people have been elected. Some have resigned in their current positions. And all this information I will share with you, and it's in GAE Retired publications on our website and in GAE publications. So please join us for that. We're also open to everybody. On a Saturday is our annual Lobby and Learn conference. So if any of this today has riled you up about things that need to be changed, I hope you'll join us as we talk about the basics of lobbying and the basics of our General Assembly. And towards the end here, we are having our own GAE Retired Day at the Capitol in February. The GAE Day at the Capitol is February 24th, so please join in for both of them or one of them. And I invite you, wherever you are in your career, to be a GAE Retired member by becoming a GAE Retired pre-retired subscriber. The lifetime membership fee to join GAE Retired is $450, but you can pay that over the life of the GAE membership year. So if you start now and become a pre-retired subscriber, you're paying that amount for 10 months. Our membership year ends in August 2023. You will have paid that. You never pay it again, and you pay it at today's rate. So if you're 5 years out from retirement, it's not going to be $450 in 5 years. Like everything else, it's going to go up. So again, I'll send information about joining the GAE Retired organization. Thank you for your time, for being here today. You had a lot of choices to make. It is before 1 o'clock. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Tony, thank you for helping me co-host this, and everybody be safe, be warm, be well. Have a great afternoon. Thank you so much. And thank you if you're a GAE member for what you do for public education each and every day. Thank you.